you why in just a second. But you guys should have just gotten something on your end that pretty much gives me permission to record. So you gotta hit that step there. And I'll tell you why in just a second we record. But before we do that, let's welcome everybody. So we are in our very first day of our pre-licensing class. This is the step that we take, the first step that we take to become a licensed real estate agent. So welcome. Couple brief introductions. You guys have had some kind of contact with Lane. I know you got an email from her because you all clicked on the Zoom link to get here. So Lane is the owner director of our school. She can answer any questions you have school related. Here's her phone number. You may want to jot that down on the inside cover of your brand new notebook. So you have that available should you need her. We're going to look at that email she sent you guys in just a second as well, because there's some really good stuff in that email. So hang on to that. That email also contains the Zoom link that we use to log on every single time we meet. So I recommend taking that email from Lane and maybe putting it in a folder. I don't know if your inbox looks like mine, but after a while it gets pushed down to the bottom, and then it goes to page 2, and then it goes to page 3, and now you're trying to log into class and you can't find the daggum email. So create a folder, put it there, and then that way you can access it. You'll be able to get that email quickly and reach out to her. Jason, yes, we do have access to the recordings. I will talk about that in just one second. So Lane is the owner director of the school. Again, she can handle anything school related. And as you're just joining us, good morning. We're making sure our cameras are coming on so we can see you. And then the other introduction is me. My name is Julie, and I'm going to be with you guys for the next couple months through this first leg of your journey. Please, please, please write my number down and my email down, again, on the inside cover of your notebook, because I am always available to help. You guys just don't get me for 4 hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm available. Text, email tend to work best for me. Never, ever, ever, ever hesitate to reach out to me. I want to help. That's why I'm here. So as you guys are jotting this down, let me give you just a really brief history about myself. You'll learn all about me in the next couple months. But just to tell you briefly about myself, this year I celebrate 21 years in real estate. So I was a youngin' when I started, I guess you could say. I got my start as an administrator at a real estate firm. I was the behind the scenes that took care of the agents so my agents could go take care of their buyers and sellers. Fast forward, at some point I gave up the admin thing and I went to sales. I jumped full time into sales. I guess I was tired of watching my agents have all the fun. So I wanted to get in on some of that action as well. So I gave up the cushy day job and went into sales full time. Then somewhere along the line too, I picked up this teaching for Lane at Carolina School of Real Estate. So today I offer pre and post licensing for Lane at Carolina School of Real Estate. I also offer tutoring. And then I'm also back to my roots, I guess you could say, because I'm affiliated with a real estate firm. And guess what I'm doing? I'm doing administrative stuff again. I'm back to what I know. I guess that's where isn't it funny how life comes full circle sometimes, right? So we have between Lane and I and the other instructors at Carolina School of Real Estate, I can't tell you how many years of experience we have. I think you're looking at about 50 just between Lane and I, and that doesn't include other instructors. So we're knowledgeable, and like I said, we're all here to help. Why don't you guys do something for me? Move your mouse until your Zoom toolbar pops up and pull up your chats. And let's chat to everyone. Let's tell everybody, what city are you in right now? What city are you in? We don't need an address. I just want to know what city. So I got Holly Springs, a couple from Charlotte, Winston. let's see, Thurmond, that is out in the middle of nowhere. You weren't kidding. Ashboro, Greensboro, Dunn, another one from Holly Springs. You guys may want to get together. Graham, Salisbury, Archdale. Is it Dashe? I too am in Archdale, so we
Who's
might be neighbors. Would it say it again?
Daisha?
Daisha, I'm in Archdale too. We might be neighbors. Who knows? It's a small world, isn't it? I got a K Vegas, Winston, Greenville, North Carolina, Kernersville. I love this. Mount Airy, High Point. Shiva's our neighbor. Summerfield, Monroe. So we're all over the state. I always think that's cool. That's one thing that Zoom allows us to do is be from all over the state. And occasionally I'll get students from another state taking this class. So that's definitely one big benefit from Zoom. So thank you guys for indulging me. As I said, I live in Archdale. My sales office is in Winston-Salem, so I kind of have the best of the triad. Those of us in the triad, don't we live in a phenomenal place? I love it here. We're all right. We do all right. I like Charlotte a lot too. I didn't see any Raleigh. Is there Raleigh in here? Or maybe around Raleigh. Thomasville. Awesome. So let's talk about a few ground rules first. Let's get the rules out of the way. First off, I am unofficially introducing you to the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. And we're going to spend time talking about them. Bottom line, they're the whole reason why we're here. They're going to be the ones to eventually give you your real estate license. But I introduce you, a soft introduction to you to them now, because another thing that they give us is the students' attendance. And they do have a requirement for attendance that you cannot miss more than 15 hours. 15 hours is the max. Please write that down and circle it. 15 hours is the max. And guys, here's the catcher. That 15 hours is regardless of the reason. There is no excused absence. We're certainly not saying you don't have a good reason. I know you do. But the thing is, the theory behind this is if you miss more than 15, you've missed too much. This is a lot of information, a lot of material that we're getting in basically a short amount of time. And so they cap it at 15. With that being said, if you're missing 14 hours, if you're missing 12, you're missing a lot. So the recommendation is you not miss unless you absolutely have to. I cannot tell you how many times students have given themselves a day off here and there, and they're at 12, 13, 14 hours, a day or two before the end of class, and then a real emergency comes up, and they have to miss, and they go over at the very end. So I recommend that you hang on to those absences for true emergencies. We're only together twice a week for 4 hours. I'm going to encourage you in just a second to put the dates of our class on your calendar. We'll look at that in a second. So that way you know when you need to be here. So we know how much you can miss. That's good. Yep, that's what we're working out, Mia. We know what you can miss. So how do I count you here? Well, in order to count you present, I need to have your camera on and I need it to be in front of you where I can see you. I think sometimes we think I'm already looking at ceilings and you guys have lovely ceilings. You really do. But I need to see you. So we need you kind of front and center where we can see you. And then I cannot have you doing other activities during class. As mentioned, and I will mention again, this is a lot of information you guys are getting ready to get. And I can't have you, with the TV on or other computer screens up doing things, whatever your distraction is. I know we're at home and we have a lot going on at home, don't we? How many of you have kids and pets and family members that demand your time? We need to have a conversation with them that during class time, this is my study time, this is my class time. Find yourself a quiet space to study in your house, even if you have to close a door and put a sign up that says do not disturb. So the family knows that this is your study time. But that's one big thing that you guys can do for me, like today. No, it's not even for me. It's for yourself. One big thing you can do for yourself is secure a distraction-free zone while we're in this class together. And also while you're studying, there's going to be some outside study times requirement. So it's pretty simple, you guys. If I can't see you, I can't give you credit for being here. It's like that. And if it chips away, 10 minutes here, an hour and a half there, that 15 minutes is going to add up pretty quickly, right? The big no-no, the one thing I absolutely cannot allow ever is you to be on this class in a moving vehicle. May it be that you're driving or you're a passenger. If I see you in a moving vehicle, I will remove you from the class. You are welcome to log back on when you get to where you need to go, but I don't want to put you at risk. I don't want to put others on the road at risk. So we're just not going to do it. We're just going to take that off the table. Questions about attendance, cameras? I got a couple of you with cameras on. I don't know if we're working out kinks or something. If you will let me know, the few of you. Ashley, I know I've heard from you. Let's see, I got a hand. Maria. Good morning, Maria.
Good morning. So if we do happen to miss a class because of an emergency or whatever, is there a way that we can catch up or?
There is. And I'm going to cover that in just 1 second, Maria. So absolutely, you can't make up the time, but we can allow you to make up the material. Absolutely. Great question. Thank you. Question comes in. What about logging in a couple minutes late? If you log in 10 minutes late, then that's 10 minutes from your attendance that we need to deduct. I pull a Zoom log and it tells me, man, you talk about Big Brother. That thing tells me what time you guys log in and what time you guys log out. So I see your attendance that way. The other thing is when we come back from break, I'm going to talk about break next. But when we come back from break, I'll do screenshot for attendance. So I can see you sitting there, so I can give you credit for the hour of being there, so I can see you on the screen. Do we need to notify me about an absence? Nope, I don't need to know. I just need you. You can help me as well by keeping up with your attendance. So if you want to claim a piece of paper in your notebook, call it hours missed or something. If you're 10 minutes late, if you're 10 minutes late from break, if you leave 30 minutes early, again, you guys, it all adds up. 15-minute hours really isn't a lot of time. Can we work on my video during break? I'm going to have you, Victoria, I'm probably going to have you reach out to Jane. She does the IT stuff. And I'll show you in just a second where you can access her email, how you can reach out to her. Regina, did I just see your hand up? Good morning.
Good morning. I was going to type it in the chat, but do you know when we will have the date for the CRAM? I just want to know for.
Yep, I'll show you that in just 1 second.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. So we're good. Cameras on. We're not in a moving vehicle. Our preference is not to call in on your phone because there's a lot going on, you guys, and you're trying to look at your phone and da-da-da-da-da. We will work with you. If you're having tech issues or computer issues, we'll work with you and allow the phone for like a class. But if it starts becoming a habit, then we may need you to reach out to Lane and discuss some options. Just communicate with us. I don't know about you guys, but my mind reading skills are weak at best. So communicate with us. Fair enough? Awesome. So we've been talking about a break. We get breaks in this class. Nobody's going to be expected to stare at this computer screen for 4 hours straight. We take a break about every hour for 10 minutes. So about the top of the hour, we get a 10-minute break. During break time, you can turn your camera off. We really don't want to see what you do during break anyway. So during break, we can turn your camera off. When we come back, we're going to turn it back on so we can do our screenshot for attendance. So we'll get what? We get 30 minutes. We get 3 10-minute breaks. We'll get one about 10, one about 11, and one about 12. And I suggest when we take break that you don't go from staring at this screen to staring at this screen. Take 10 minutes. Stop staring at a screen. I think that makes a big difference, especially as we get into this material. Give your brain a break. Walk outside or go poke around in the refrigerator or, you know, something. But just give your brain a break for a second on these breaks. Like we said, you guys, it all adds up. So if you log in late, if you log out early, if you come back late from break, it all adds up and it counts against you. So I suggest you guys keep up with your time. When I see you start to getting close, I'll send you a courtesy email. And I'll tell you, a lot of times what I hear from the courtesy email is, oh, I didn't realize I'd missed that much time. So I think if you guys keep up with it, then it won't sneak up on you like that. The other thing I have to say, as mentioned, I do take screenshots for attendance when we come back from break. So what if you're late coming back from break and you missed a screenshot for attendance? Communicate with me in the chat. Tell me in the chat that you're back so I can give you credit, partial credit for that hour. Partial credit is better than no credit at all. Agree? So if you're 15 minutes late, just tell me in the chat and I'll know that you're back. We don't have time for me to stop class every time one of you turn your camera on and off. Every time one of you come back break, leave early. So again, I ask that you guys communicate with me. Help me help you. And you can have, I know with the chats, we've chatted to everyone. The other option you guys have there is to chat just to me. So if you don't want to chat to everyone, if you're 15 minutes late from break, you can set your chat just to me and say, I'm back. And that way I can make sure I give you credit. Again, 15 hours, and this is the important part, you guys. There are no excused absences. The fact is, if you've missed more than 15, you've missed too much. Questions on the attendance? All right. So we're going to talk, we're going to spend our whole time talking about why we're here. But before we get started, I want to take a few minutes and talk about why we're not here. So let's go ahead and set some of these expectations. Awesome. Let's go ahead and set some of these expectations up front. I'm not here to teach you guys how to be top producing real estate agents. That's not my job. We're not going to talk about how to get buyer and seller leads. We're not going to talk about how to successfully do an open house. That's not why we're here. We are here to give you guys the laws and the rules that you need to become a successful real estate agent. This is just the beginning of your career. This is just the beginning of your education and training. I'm going to touch on further training in just a bit. Some of you very well may be here with your own personal agenda. I want to learn about this. I want to know more about that. We may or may not cover it, but we have our own agenda and we'll talk about that. I'll even show you our agenda in just a second so we can make sure that we're on the same page. Let me ask you guys a couple questions by raise of hands. How many of you have personal experience with real estate? You've bought a house, you've sold a house, keep your hands up. You've rented a house, you've leased a house. You have some kind of personal experience with real estate. Okay, thank you. You can put your hands down. I need you to take that personal experience and put it off to the side. I can guarantee you, you're not going to get tested on your personal experience. So what I need you guys to do right now is separate. There's real world and then there's pre-licensing world. And to get us through these exams, to get us through this material, guess where I need you guys? Not in the real world. I need you in pre-licensing world, where we talk about law and rules. We're building your foundation. We are providing you your foundation so you can go on and grow your career and build on that foundation. So your personal experience, I'm not going to talk about your personal experience in class. Some of you like to raise your hand and say, my agent didn't do that. I am definitely not going to tell you if your agent was right or wrong. I'm not even going there. I also know that there are 2, if not 3 sides to every story. And sometimes when we're telling our side, we tend to make it look a little bit better, don't we? So we are not going there, because when we're together, we need to be in pre-licensing world, put the real world off to the side. Maybe you'll be questioned on what you experienced, but I know you will be questioned on pre-licensing world material. I got another question for you guys. You can show me by raise of hands. Where are, and I know you're out there, where are my HGTV fans? Yep, where are you? Come on. Another piece of advice, there's a lot of you. Another piece of advice I can offer you when we're in pre-licensing world as you're preparing for these exams, turn it off. That stuff is not real. It's reality TV. And that stuff is not real. You're not going to pass this exam by watching HGTV. All right, one more question. You show me by raise of hands. How many of you know somebody, maybe a family member or a friend, that is right now a real estate agent? They have a license, they're running around practicing, working with buyers and sellers and landlords and tenants. Wow, a lot of you people do. They may or may not be helpful to you. The reason I say that is, well, we just established there's a difference between real world and pre-licensing world. But the other reason, you guys, we don't know how long it's been since they've been through this exam. They may or may not be of help to you. So just proceed with caution there. If you're asking them about agency and they start talking about, well, this buyer I had the other day, I don't want them to screw things up with real world versus pre-licensing. So tell them you're taking this class, let them support you. Absolutely, they can be a cheerleader for you, but they may not make a good study buddy. Does that make sense? So with this class, we're not giving you all the pieces. We are not going to complete the puzzle of your real estate education, your real estate knowledge. We're going to give you some of the pieces, but you still have a lot of information to gain once we leave here. We are going to scratch lots of surfaces. And we're going to talk about things outside of real estate. We're going to scratch surfaces of the financing world. We're going to scratch surfaces of the appraisal world. We're going to scratch surfaces of insurance and the different components that are part of the real estate transaction. A good chunk of what we're doing is going to be the real estate piece of it, of course, but we're just introducing you to lots of topics for you guys to choose how to proceed once you do have that license. As mentioned, you guys, this can be a tough class. And it's going to require some work, some commitment on your part. And we need that commitment to start today. This is a lot of information. Have you guys gotten your books yet? Have you guys picked this thing up and used it as a weight? I mean, have you seen this thing? We're sitting at 800 and some pages, right? We're going through most of this. So this is a lot of information to cover in a very short amount of time. So it requires, again, you being focused, non-distracted when we're here together. It requires some outside study time, which I'll talk about in just a second. I'll offer my suggestions. But it requires some work on you guys, on your end. This is what I always say. If getting your real estate license is something you really, really want, you will do whatever it takes to get it. It's like that. So my rhetorical question to you guys is, how badly do you want it? And that may help you decide how much you want to put into it, how much you're willing to dedicate. So let's talk just a little bit about the process. We're going to dive into this deeper later, but I do want to scratch the surface and let you know what you can expect. There are 2 exams that stand between you and your real estate license. There are 2 tests that stand between you and your real estate license. The first test is our end of class exam. We will look at that date in just a second. So our end of class exam, got to make a 75%. There's 112 questions. You get 4 hours. There is math on these exams. I need you guys to go calculator shopping. I don't have my calculator in front of me, but I'll grab it on break so we can show what type of calculator you need. You need a basic calculator. I cannot let you use the calculator on your phone for the exam. Why? Because your phone has Google on it. So we can't let you use a calculator on your phone. The basic calculator isn't as smart as the calculator on your phone. So I suggest getting your basic calculator sooner rather than later, so you can get practicing with it, so you'll be good at it by the time test day rolls around. And again, I'll grab my calculator on break so I can show you guys what a basic calculator, what would be acceptable. You guys remember from high school, what were those TI 82s, and you could like store formulas and graph and all those fun things? Yeah, no, you can't use those either. That is not a basic calculator. So is it Myra? Michelle, I'm sorry. That's perfect. That's perfect. Sorry about that. So yep, just a very basic calculator. And then the other thing about our end of class exam, we do offer a free retake. If you do not pass, if you do not make a 75%, then you don't make a 75%, but you make at least a 50%. So you make at least a 50%, you are eligible for the retake. And again, I will show you those dates in just a second. Question comes in, is a scientific calculator acceptable? No, because I'm guessing that thing stores formulas and graphs and all that other stuff. Is that what that is? No, we can't let you use that. Basic calculators only. So this is test 1. Everybody good? There's 2 tests, right? So this is test 1. Test 1 is your ticket out of this class. Once you get your ticket out of this class, you are now eligible to sit for your state exam, offered to you by the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. Your state exam breaks it down into 2 sections. There's a national section, topics that cover the entire country, no matter where you are. And then there's a state section, things that are just specific to our great state of North Carolina. We will show you as we go on what topics are state-specific topics, so you can help focus your study on state versus national topics. Both sections are 75% pass rate. I'm going to talk more about the state exam. You got to submit an application. That whole process, we will talk about that when we're about halfway through, because there's nothing anybody can do about it yet since we just started. So we'll talk about that process. Can we use a calculator on the state exam? Basic calculator only. They won't let you into the testing center with anything other than a basic calculator. Big part of my job, you guys, a big part of my job is preparing you for this state exam. So a lot of the rules that we set down today, a lot of the expectations we have today are all in mind of getting you prepared for that state exam. So why do I make you run out and buy a basic calculator? Because that's all you can use for the state exam. Does that make sense? We're trying to prepare you for the big dance, the big dance, and that's your state exam. So the question is, Julie, I hear you. How do I become a real estate broker? Well, your first step is to get your certificate of completion from a pre-licensing school. How do you do that? You meet the attendance requirements, you don't go over 15 hours, you pass the end of class exam, and then you attempt a midterm. Not looking for pass or fail. What's that say? We're just asking that you take it. We do these 3 things, you get your certificate of completion. That certificate of completion is what you need to be eligible to take the state exam. When you pass the state exam, there's your prize. That's when you get your real estate license. So this is a process. It is a process. And again, today is day 1 of the process. So we are in the throes of step 1 and we'll be here for the next couple of months. What questions do I have about the process? Yes, Ashley.
Sorry, I was trying to find a way to unmute myself. So the midterm is like a mock exam, if you will.
Covers the material we've covered up to that point. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I kind of use the midterm. I like to think of the midterm as like a checkpoint because it's about halfway through, give or take, and it serves as a good checkpoint. Like if you were to sit down and take your state exam right now, where would you be? And we got other practice quizzes along the way as well. So I'll introduce you to those in just a bit. So how do we get through step 2? How do we get through that state exam? Well, we've provided some tools for you guys to help get you started. We've talked about being here. I know perfect class attendance is a long shot. And hey, I get that. But use that as a goal. The less you miss, I do believe if I were to graph it out, I believe there'd be a direct correlation for those students that missed a lot of time and on how well they do at the end of class exam. So please, please, please don't miss unless you absolutely have to. You guys got a textbook or you are getting one. You're in communication with Lane about your book. We're going to do a brief introduction with that in just a second. You guys also have access to our online learning system. This was in the email you guys got from Lane either yesterday or the day before. We asked you to go ahead and get your account set up. How many of you have gotten your online learning system account? Several of you? Awesome, awesome. We'll show you that in just a second. If you haven't gotten yourself set up, then that would be a priority homework assignment this afternoon. I also encourage you guys to make your own flashcards, outlines, notes, etc. I provide you guys all of my PowerPoints. So there's no need to try to write down every single word on the PowerPoint. I'm telling you right now, if that's what your strategy is, by the time I'm done with you, your hand is going to be hurting because there's a lot. So I give you guys my PowerPoints. I'm like, here you go. And the hopes that you will use that as a guide gives you the opportunity to listen instead of trying to listen and write every single word in front of you. And then you can keep notes that kind of goes through things that you want to check on or whatever. The other thing we have is a YouTube channel. We don't have it yet, but we will. You guys know at the beginning, I hit record, right? The homework assignment I give to myself after the first day of class. This afternoon, I'm going to create our very own YouTube channel. Is that kind of cool? We got our own YouTube channel, or we will have our own YouTube channel. When we come back together on Thursday, I will give you guys the link to the YouTube channel. And every class we have, I will put that recording in the YouTube channel. So we have a class, you'll have it available. Somebody asked what happens if I have to miss, an emergency comes up. You'll be able to access the whole class through the YouTube channel. If you come in late, if you have to leave early, then you'll have that access to that YouTube channel. As we get into some heavier material, you may say, oh my gosh, I need to hear agency again. Guess what? You have the YouTube, you have the recording. Every word we say is going to be available in that YouTube channel. Is it public? It will be, yes. And I will give you guys that link. I hadn't created it yet for this class, but I will give you guys that link on Thursday. Another question, do I email the PowerPoints? No, I don't, but I have them available in the online learning system. So I will show you in just a second on how you can access that. How do you opt out of being on YouTube? You're not. When you look at the channel, all you're going to see is me, unless you guys talk. If you talk, then it comes up. So if you don't want to be on YouTube, then everything you tell me is direct chat. Does that make sense? As soon as you unmute and talk when we're recording, then your little picture will pop up. So if you don't want to be on video, I get it. Trust me, I get it. I didn't think I wanted to be on video either until Zoom, until the pandemic hit. Now here we are. Victoria got her camera working. Good morning. It's good to see you. So if you don't, then you can just, communicate via the direct chat or, reach out to me outside of class. But as long as you don't talk, then you won't be on YouTube. So that's my homework assignment for myself. If you just can't wait till Thursday, if you just have to have it sooner, just shoot me an email and I'll be happy to respond with the link. But you got to give me time for it to do its thing. This is enough to get us started. As we go on, I'm going to introduce you guys to other tools that are available to you. But between the book and the online learning system, this is a good place to get us started. If you find that you want additional study material, please come to Lane or I for suggestions versus going to Google. We know how Google works by now, right? There's some really good stuff out there on the internet, but guess what? There's some really not so good stuff out there as well. And if you go to Google, I always fear that we might be finding some inaccurate, outdated information. Does that make sense? So once you've been through the book, once you've been through the online learning system, when you're looking for more study material, please reach out to Lane or I. We can definitely make suggestions and recommendations. Yeah. Did I hear a question? So we talked about some outside class time required, and it is required. We're not just going to be able to sit in this class for 8 hours a week and thank you. And be able to pass this exam. I'm telling you guys that right now. Outside class study time is required. So the question is, how much? Well, we're all different. We all learn different. We kind of need to channel our inner high school student or our inner college student. How did you learn in high school and college? That's going to be a good indicator of how you learn now. The recommendation is that you spend, for every hour we spend in class, you spend 2 to 3 hours outside of class. So typically we meet for 8 hours a week. So if we meet for 8 hours a week, the recommendation is that you plan on 16 to 24 hours outside of class. I just gave y'all a part-time job, didn't I? Just like that. Poof. How many of you have another job? How many have family, friends, other obligations besides this class? I believe every hand should be up. I need you guys to find your balance. I'm not asking you to give anything up, but I am asking you to rearrange, to coordinate and find that balance where you can work this class in to your schedule. I recommend, in addition to putting the dates for the class in your calendar, I also recommend scheduling study time. And when you schedule study time, if you schedule 4 hours on Saturday, then that's a commitment to yourself that you need to keep. And that'll help keep you on track. I kind of liken pre-licensing. You guys, when we used to go, well, I guess we still are, but when we go to an all-you-can-eat buffet and you get your little plate and you're looking at all that good food, you got to strategize, don't you? You got to figure out, what am I going to put on my plate? And that's what I need you guys to focus on, is your plate. I'm not asking you to give everything up. Family's important. I understand that. Trust me. But I need you guys to make time for this class. Maybe instead of binging a whole show on Hulu, you just watch a couple episodes at a time, right? Don't give up Hulu, but make time for this class. Let's see, what time would I recommend for a current college student? They say if we're spending 2 to 3 hours for every hour in class, guys, this is a lot of information. And speaking of your family can be a big support to you. Let your family know how important this is. Let your family know that they got to help you by allowing you to have that study time. I think family support is huge in any industry. I do know for a fact in real estate, family support is huge. So let's get our family. I'm getting you guys on board today. Let's get our family on board today as well. Somebody asked you have a Carolina School of Real Estate from a previous class. You have an online learning system account from a previous class. You'll be able to access everything again. Please bear with me. I'll show you in just a second where you can find those PowerPoints. Guys, the first couple weeks that we spend together is a lot of introductory stuff. I almost call it a cakewalk. The first couple weeks will give us a real feel for how this class is going to roll. Once we get into the third week is when we start getting into some heavy, deep stuff. So my hope in getting you guys started on some study habits, by the time we get into the more heavier material, you will be established. Please, please, again, I just told you to channel your inner high school student. How many of you back in high school were able to not study until the night before? And then you could pull an all-nighter. You didn't have to pick your book up, and you could pull an all-nighter, and then you could fly through the test easy peasy, right? First off, most of us probably aren't in high school anymore. We're all a little older than what we were, just a little bit, when what we were in high school. But second off, you guys, this material doesn't work that way. These exams, both of these exams are an application exam, which means they're not going to ask you, what does this word mean? They're going to put you in a situation and tell you to apply it. So the foundation that we're building in class together is introducing you to the words, introducing you to the terms and the verbiage, and working on helping you being able to apply it. And that's where the study time is required. You can't read this book and pass this test. You got to apply what you know. And the best, or one of the best suggestions I have for you guys when we're here together is to just listen. I know so many times we're trying to, again, write down every single word on the PowerPoint. Multitasking isn't as clever as it sounds. When you're multitasking, you're giving your focus to several different things. So if you're listening and writing, something's getting missed. So my recommendation is you do more listening than writing. And again, how do we get you the information? My PowerPoints are available. We're recording. You have everything right here if you need to go back and spend some time on that material. So listening, I think, is a huge part. Eliminating those distractions so you can be with me and be focused to help you get through these exams. We don't have any official homework assignments, but what I say is your homework for every class. I always ask you guys to look ahead. I will tell you before we leave what we're going to cover the next class. So I always ask you to look ahead. And then when we're done with the class, I need you to review what we've covered. So what are you spending all this study time on? We're looking ahead at the material coming, and then we're doing a deeper dive on the material that we covered. We're going back through the book, we're going back through the YouTube, we're taking those quizzes, we're making sure that we have the information that we have covered in class today. How many of you have read the first 3 units? Couple of you. If you haven't looked ahead yet, that's okay. We got some time. But if you haven't looked ahead yet, we're jumping in. We're going to blow through unit 1 today. We'll get into unit 2. Understand this about this class. I don't have a rear view mirror. So once we cover it, we move on. If we want to get through everything, I guess that's the question. Do you guys want to get through everything that you may see on your final exam? So we don't have a rear view mirror. What I do have is the recording, and I have myself. Use me as one of those tools. If I can help in any way, all you need to do is reach out to me. Remember, in pre-licensing world, we're asking the right questions. I want to hear from you guys, but I need those questions, those comments to be on track. You guys love to unmute yourself and say, this is kind of off topic, but don't do that. Don't do that. We got to stay on topic. Again, there's a lot of information. And if we want to get through it all, then we got to stay on track. So we're going to ask questions that are relevant to what we're talking about. You guys may hear me say, hang on, I'm going to cover that, because we are. So know if I say that, it just means that it's coming, and we will cover it to the extent that we need to. Kara, you get with Lane. Yep, just get with Lane. She can help you out. Guys, I need you to keep the goal in mind. Again, we're not here to become top producers today. Step one is to get through this class so you can get through your state exam. I know some of you may want to be top producers. You want to go out and help buyers and sellers or landlords and tenants, and that's awesome. But you can't do any of that until you get through your state exam. You can't take your state exam until you get through this class. So don't get ahead of yourself. Keep that in mind. And that state exam is our #1 goal in this class. I'm preparing you for that state exam. So here we are. It's the wonderful world of real estate. And it is an adventure. I try to have fun. I know some of this isn't always the most interesting stuff, but it's what we got to do. Have you guys ever sat down and tried to read law before? Boring. We got to get through it. You got to have this basic understanding of laws and rules and foundations to get you through these exams. What questions do I have? Okay, so a couple things. We're going to go away from this for just a second. And a couple things I want to talk about. First off, let's look at that email you guys got from Lane. I know you all got it because you're all here right now. And our Zoom link is in this email. Again, I suggest putting it in a folder off to the side so you can access it each time. I do log on about 8:45 each morning just to give you time to get here. Sometimes your computers have to update. Sometimes your Zoom has to update. So I do log on about 8:45, but we don't turn cameras on and begin until 9 on the dot each time. Just a few things I want to point out from this email of importance. The registration and contract, Lane needs some e-signatures for you guys. So if you haven't done this yet, please do so sooner rather than later. So Lane has what she needs from you. You just click on both of those links and sign each doc. As mentioned, here's our online learning system. So Jane has provided you guys with a tutorial that shows you how to set up, how to create that account. The link you need to access the online learning system is also in this email. So we got our Zoom link and we got the online learning system link. You may want to, bookmark it so you can access it easily. We'll look at your online learning system in just a second. I know we're already dealing with some tech things. Any tech issue, any tech thing, Jane is, we'll call her our IT person. She's really good about troubleshooting with you guys, getting you through any issues. Zoom's really interesting because as we just saw when we logged on, we're from all over the state, right? Which means we have different internet providers. We have different servers. We're all on a different device. And somehow Zoom is talking to all of that. So we understand there's some tech issues. If you run into any issues, please reach out to Jane. She can help you troubleshoot. Zoom, we said you're not going to come in on your smartphone. You're not going to be driving. You're not going to be in a moving vehicle. So kind of the things we've talked about. The Zoom link we use to access classes here. Another thing I want to point out to you guys, Classmarker is the program that we take our final exam on. So when we take that exam, when you take your midterm, it's going to be in a program called Classmarker. One thing I suggest, one thing I recommend is go ahead and watching the Classmarker tutorial, because that'll show you how Classmarker works. You can skip a question, you can bookmark a question, you can go back and forth. So the tutorial will show you how that works, and you'll get your real feel for it when we take our midterm, which is another reason why that's so important. So you can get exposure to this program that we're going to take our exam on, our final exam on. And then the last thing in this email is our class date. I also have a tentative schedule for us that I'll show you when we come back from break. But I do suggest you taking these dates, putting them in your calendar so you know when you need to be here. Please make a note right out the gate. We don't have class next Tuesday. That's not a typo. We do not have class next Tuesday. So we're going to meet today and Thursday, and then you're going to get a class off. And I think that's good because that's going to give you guys an opportunity to get caught up, because shortly after that, when we get back, things really take off. So please make a note, no class on Tuesday. Again, you guys, keep this email from Lane. There's lots of good stuff in this email. I'm going to show you the online learning system in just a second when we come back from break, because I'm getting a lot of questions about what's in there. So we're going to look at that, introduce you to that, and get you guys going on that. Any questions so far? So we're going to take a break. As mentioned, we take a 10-minute break about the top of each hour. And so we don't have any confusions about how long a 10-minute break is. I do set a timer. At the end of the timer, there's this loud, obnoxious bell. Get your dogs ready because they'll go a little nuts. If you're worried about this 10 minutes getting away from you, then I suggest setting the timer on your phone for like 9 minutes and 30 seconds or something like that. During break, we can all turn our cameras off. When we come back in 10 minutes, we're going to turn our cameras back on. We're going to talk about the online learning system, and we're going to get started into Unit 1. So let's take 10. that bell get your attention? Good. Yes, Kimberly, I can. So welcome back. It's kind of the way that works. And a couple of you having computer or camera issues, if you will tell me in the chat that you're back, until we get these camera issues resolved, please chat with me often, so I know you're sitting there. Oh, Sarah, I'm sorry. Now you know. So we're back. Cameras are coming back on. Welcome back. In just a second, I'm going to take a screenshot for attendance. Again, if I don't catch you in the screenshot for attendance, tell me you're back in the chat. If you're not sure, tell me you're back in the chat. When in doubt, say, I'm back. And that way we all know we're on the same page. So I'm going to take a screenshot, maybe
back.
on your end. I'm sorry, yeah.
I'm back.
Will you tell me in the chat, please, Shauna, so I have it?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So I'm going to take a screenshot. So on your end, and I got to do two because I got you guys on two different screens. So I'm going to do two, but on your end, you may see like a little flash or something. It's all good. It's just me taking pictures. And again, I know the first day, the first couple classes, we're lenient. We try to work with you guys, understanding we're working through some of this tech stuff. But thank you for communicating with me. That's the biggest thing I ask of you guys, is to communicate with me. Yeah, do I have a question? Okay. So let's look at this online learning system. Again, you got the email from Lane. There's the tutorial that'll walk you through how to get it set up. Once you're set up, you're going to be looking at something like this. And you guys are welcome to peruse and kind of play around. That actually might be a good way for you guys to spend your time this week as we're getting warmed up, is just kind of poke around in the online learning system and the various things that we have in there. We're going to work through this together. I don't cover everything in the online learning system, but the things we have in here are like additional material to help you guys get through these exams. I've mentioned the material that we need to know for our state exam. This whole class is built around the syllabus from the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. So the question is, what can I expect to see on my state exam? Ta-da! Here it is right here in the syllabus. You may want to look around, you may want to poke through it. I promise you guys, I wrote this class with the syllabus in my hand. So if we're talking about it, it's a good candidate for your state exam. And you guys don't need to ask me, are we going to be tested on this? If we are talking about it, it is a good candidate for your state exam. And this is our focus. When I talk about staying on the right track, this is your track. So I do encourage you guys just to look around. Again, it's, 132 pages. I wouldn't necessarily print it unless you really want to, but you wouldn't need to, because knowing we're going to go through it. But I know this answers a lot of questions of what are we going to talk about. It's all right here. We also have the various units. Understand this. I don't go in order of the textbook. I go in order of the syllabus. So once we get through the first few units, we're going to start skipping around the book. You can see, for example, we do units 1 through 6, and then we do this crazy jump ahead to unit 20 before we come back and pick up 7, 8, 9, and 10, etc. So if you want to know the order we're going to go in, you can just look at the order of the online learning system, how this is laid out. And within each section is some supplemental material, but also within each section is an additional quiz. And what I like about these with the online learning system, I'm not even going to read this. I'm just going to hit confirm. It tells you, this is the question, these are your choices, and it tells you whether it's right or wrong. But the beneficial part to you guys is it tells you why it's right or wrong. So this is a huge tool you guys can use to help you get that information. There's also quizzes in your book, various things. As you can see, we got some, a 25% review, kind of the culmination of everything. So we encourage you guys to stay up with the unit. Like we said, once we finish unit 2, which won't be today, we won't finish unit 2 today, but we'll get through that on Thursday. So once we're done with unit 2, that might be a good time for you to come in and take the test for unit 2, see how you did. If you didn't pass, then you may need to go back and review unit 2. If you did, you want to keep reviewing unit 2. Because if we're doing unit 2 today and Thursday, and your exam is May 21st, I think, the end of the class, that's a long way away, and I got a lot to cover. If you don't touch unit 2 between now and the end of May, you've lost unit 2. So that's why a big part of your homework assignment each class is going back and reviewing what we've covered, not necessarily that class, but what we've covered so far, especially as we get into the heavier material. Again, poke around, look at the different things, see what we got. I also want to introduce you guys. We have our very own folder. It's called the Julie folder. So anything I have just for you guys is going to be in the Julie folder. And for example, you can see in the Julie folder are all of my PowerPoints. So we're getting ready to start in unit 1. It's all right here for you. There is math in this class on these exams. We're going to do an introduction to math on Thursday. We start actual testable math at the end of unit 3. So the calculator, I promised, I got mine. So if you guys go calculator shopping, this is what I mean by a basic calculator. I pretty much got 10 keys, don't I? The only functions we're using is add, subtract, multiple, divide, and percent. So when we say a basic calculator, this is what I'm referring to. I think I got this for like $6.99 at Walgreens or something like that. Amazon can have one here too. But again, you guys, we're going to start math. We'll do a math introduction on Thursday. We'll start math next week, testable math next week. And I really do encourage you guys to get your calculator now so you can get used to using it. All calculators have their own little quirk. So I think the sooner you can get it. Y'all want to know how many times you guys have showed up on test day, opening your calculator out of the package? In some cases, asking me to show you how to work it on test day. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to yourself. Go calculator shopping right now. Well, after class. Don't do it now. Consider that a distraction. Get off Amazon. I'm just kidding. Questions on the very basic calculator. Can everyone else see Julie? Oh, you can't actually see me?
No, can you see me?
I can.
I can't see. Okay, well, that's fine, as long as you can
So
see me.
you may want to just exit out and go back to the main screen and see if you can't come back in. And guys, if all else fails, log out of Zoom and log back in. That's my
Okay.
simple solution. Restart. So you may want to try that. So our PowerPoints, the other thing I have for you, we'll work through these. We'll see the various things we go as we go. The other thing I have for you guys is a tentative schedule. So not only do I have our class dates with a reminder that we don't have class next Tuesday, but I also have about what topic we're going to cover that day. Now, this is tentative, so it's not like set in stone, but this is going to be about what we cover each day. So today we're doing our welcome, unit 1. We're going to start unit 2. Thursday, we're going to wrap up unit 2, get going in unit 3. So this is this just shows us, guys, we just keep moving forward. And as this material gets deeper, it's going to get thicker, it's going to get more involved. Some of our dates at the end. I know somebody asked about the cram course. You guys have a cram course scheduled for you guys on Friday, May 17th from 11 to 3. It's also online. It's optional. You don't have to come. You can't use it to make up time. And it's included in your cost. Jane's going to be doing your cram course. We're not going to send you Jane's Zoom link until May 16th because we don't want you to lose it. So we'll send you Jane's Zoom link the day before the cram course. Nothing else we can say about this right now, except get it in your calendar. Go ahead and get it in your calendar. So when May is going to be here before we know it, you guys. We know how time gets away from us, right? So May will be here before we know it. You can see our final exam is the last day of class, the last day of scheduled class, which is May 21st. It's online. Again, I will talk about your exam later. It's too early to talk about it now. And then as mentioned, if you don't pass the final exam, but you make at least a 50%, you are eligible for the retake. So we have the date for your retake scheduled as well. Go ahead and pencil this in. Maybe you need it, maybe you don't. But go ahead and pencil it in now as you're filling in your calendar, so you can have that should you need it. So again, please take the time to put these dates, all these dates in your calendar, part of your homework assignment. And that way you'll have them. And like I said, schedule study time with yourself. Once you put it in the calendar, you've made a commitment to yourself. If you don't show up for the study time, who have you hurt? Yourself. So do that for yourself. I think it helps keeping that plate balanced with everything that we all have going on. Everybody's got something going on. Let me try to help you make room for this class now. Fair enough? Questions on our schedule, the tentative schedule, online learning system. Again, we'll poke back and forth. We'll be back and forth in here a few times. Yes, who do I hear?
Will we have to have a desktop computer for the final exam? Like I'm using an iPad right now.
iPads can work. Yep, those
Okay.
work. Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
The other thing I have to say to you guys, just in case, life happens, you guys keep your eyes on your email. If anything happens, if Lane or I need to get in touch with all of you, the only way we can do so is via email. So keep your eyes, check your email. Whatever you receive this Zoom link with is the email we have for you. And just keep your eye on that email should we ever need to reach out, communicate with you guys. How we doing so far? So far, so good? Good stuff? Good. Some thumbs ups, head bobs. I'll take it. All right, couple things. I want to give you a quick introduction to your textbook. Again, if you've lifted this thing, there's a lot. We are actually going to start in Unit 1. I'll be honest, you guys, I don't really count Unit 1. There's not anything testable in Unit 1. Well, let me rephrase that. If there is anything testable in Unit 1, then we're going to dig deeper on it in a future unit. I do like Unit 1 though, because somebody asked earlier, what's my teaching style? So Unit 1 allows us to get warmed up. Unit 1 allows us to see what we can kind of expect for the rest of the class. Unit 1 kind of introduces us to some basic real estate concepts. Turn with me, if you will, in your book to page 1, which is the beginning of Unit 1. And I do just want to point out a few things since we're using Unit 1 as our warm-up. At the beginning of each unit, you see there a set of key terms. Knowing what the word means is huge. You guys are coming into a new industry. With the new industry comes a new language. I'm going to teach you guys how to speak broker. But we got to know basics. Back up 101. We need to know what the word means. Do not try to do a flashcard for every single word. You're going to have more flashcards than what you know what to do with. So my suggestion is you go through Unit 1 and once we cover it, for example, and you say, I know what these words mean. Ooh, I don't know what that word means. Look it up. If it doesn't stick, that's the one that you make a flashcard out of. And that's why I like you guys customizing your own flashcards. It's words and terms that you need help with. Please don't try to make a flashcard with every single one. Now let's fast forward to the end of Unit 1 on page 15. The end of each unit also has a key point review. Let's call this like the Cliff's Notes. It's the abbreviated version of the whole chapter. Now, we're not going to use the key point review as a substitute for the unit, but we're going to kind of use it as a checklist. Again, once we're done with unit 1, go through the key point review. Do you understand what this, and this is? Ooh, I'm still not sure about that. That helps you know what you need to go back and look up or watch the recording on. So if you can check it off, you want to keep it fresh, right? Because we know we might be tested on it, but that helps you know what to review now, what you need to solidify the information. Fast forward one more page to page 17. All units also end with a unit quiz. So we can use this as another self-assessment to see how we're doing. When I introduce you guys to math on Thursday, some of the math I'm going to teach you is how you can grade yourself. So if you take the unit 1 quiz and you don't make a 75%, that tells us we need to go back and refresh on unit 1. Does that make sense? If you take the unit 1 quiz and you make a 98%, you're probably going to be all right for unit 1 until now, until the end when it's time to review. If you guys are self-assessing, if you're doing these quizzes and checking yourself as we go, you're identifying your areas of weakness to help you get ready for that exam, giving yourself plenty of time to make sure you refresh that. How many of you, has it been a minute since you took a test? And my hand will go up first. How many of you, has it been a minute since you took a test? Yeah, most of us, right? So I think a big part of this class, well, there's 2 big pieces of this information. One is getting the information, which we're covering in class together. But the other piece is trying to interpret some of these dang test questions. Now, unit 1, remember, is our warm-up unit, so there's nothing to interpret, not much to interpret. But as we get into future units, when we get into the heavier units, those applications questions start coming in, and we need to understand how to dissect, how to work through these questions. What I want to do on Thursday, I want to give you guys a minute to look at the unit 1 quiz after we talk about it today. But what I want to do on Thursday is look at a couple test questions together in unit 1 and offer some tips and tricks on how you could talk yourself through a question that you're stuck on. So we'll do that on Thursday. When you are taking the quizzes at the end of the unit, I recommend writing your answers on a piece of paper as opposed to in the book. Because once you say number 2 is B, for example, that will always be there and you won't be able to take this quiz again. So if you write those answers on a separate piece of paper, then this is a quiz you can take again and again and again, especially to help get you ready for that end of class exam. All of the answers to the unit questions, the end of unit quizzes, are in the back of your book. So you can go to the back and find those. You also have a glossary in the back of your book. Don't forget about the glossary. Again, a big understanding of this class is knowing what that word means so you can apply it. I'm always going to encourage you guys to look words up. And you have the glossary. How many of you, when I said math earlier, had this little mental block go up? You thought I said a bad 4-letter word that I shouldn't be saying in public just yet, right? We just met each other and I'm already cussing a little bit. Okay, everybody breathe, breathe. There is math. We're going to go through the math section at a time. It's not time to cry. It's too early to cry. So we're going to go through this section, the math, a piece at a time. I have plenty of practice for you guys so you can work your way through it. This is what I want you guys to hear me say out the gate. In either of your exams, the math alone can't fail you. So what I'm telling you is if you get all the math wrong, it's still possible to pass both exams. There's only 8, 7, 8, 9 test math questions on both of your exams. So does that help? Also, always remember, I am not preparing you guys for a math test. I'm preparing you for a real estate exam with some math in it. So let's breathe again. We're not going to stress ourselves out over the math. We're going to go through it. We're going to cover it. I'm going to provide you practice so you can do on the homework. So if you can get a couple math questions, then that could up your, but the math is not our heavily tested section. So yes, there is math. Again, we'll start it right at the end of Unit 3. If math isn't your thing, in the back of the book is a math fact section. And it kind of gives you a refresher on how to use your calculator, how to convert fractions to decimals, how to convert percentage to rates. If math isn't your thing, I encourage you to take time, don't study it thoroughly, but look in the back of your book at the math facts section to refresh some of these basic terms, basic concepts. And again, we'll do a little math introduction on Tuesday to help us get warmed up. So we're not, I'm going to say it again, everybody hear me, we're not stressing out about the math. You guys want to say that with me? Here we go. We are not stressing out about the math. I want you guys stressing out over stuff like agency, not math. Fair enough? All right, breathe with me. We'll get through some math. The other piece with this exam, as I mentioned, is kind of interpreting some of these test questions. And I want to introduce you guys to something called absolute words. I want you to start paying attention for absolute words. We're going to see them in my PowerPoint. We're going to see them in your test questions. Every single word means something. But absolute words might be able to help us eliminate an answer choice or come up with the right answer. Like, for example, if the question says all brokers, what does that mean? Every single broker, every single one of us. If you can think of one exception, then it's not all, it's most, for example. That's why those absolute words, never, how often does never happen? Well, there it is, right? Never. So if we know, if we can get familiar, start looking out for these absolute words. And again, when we come together on Thursday, we're going to look through just a few in Unit 1 to offer some more tips and tricks to help you work through these questions. As you guys are studying, if you get stuck on a question, I do well with screenshots. Take a screenshot, take a picture, send it to me and say, Julie, they say it's B. Why is it B? And I'm happy to help you through that. That's the kind of thing we need to do outside of class, because the question you're stuck on might be different than the one you're stuck on, might be different than the one you're stuck on. So let me help you with what you are stuck on. Send me pictures, send me screenshots. You guys love to unmute yourself and say, I saw a question and it said something like this, something about this. I can't address that. I've got to see the question, because as I just said, every single word means something. One word can change the whole answer choice. By the way, both of your exams, my exam and your state exam, are all multiple choice. No essays, no fill in the blank. They're all multiple choice, A, B, C, and D. Is that good news? So you come into this with a 25% chance of getting each one right. If you can eliminate one, now you got a 33% chance. If you can eliminate two, now you got a 50% chance. Y'all want to go to Vegas on 25% odds or 50% odds? Let's go to Vegas with higher odds, right? The better chance we have. So absolute words. And again, we highlight these in my PowerPoints to help draw you to them. And you will see these in your test questions, and they mean something. Another thing I want us to wrap our brains around early, let's say a little bit more about the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. They require this class. They provide you a state exam. We'll talk more about them as we go. But I think it's important we understand what their main purpose is. Their main purpose is not to help us make lots of money. Their purpose is not to help us to be top producers. What is their main purpose? They're out there to protect the consumers when they're working with us. This is why you have those two hurdles, the hurdle of my exam and the hurdle of your state exam. You've got to prove to the commission that you have the knowledge to go work with and assist their public. Does that make sense? And guess what happens if we harm their public? The commission has the power to discipline our license. We will talk about disciplinary actions, what they can and can't do to you. The commission is a licensing board. They regulate our license. They issue our license once we've proven to them that we have the knowledge to work with their public. And once we get our license, if we harm their public, then they have the right, they have the power to take action. So I think understanding this kind of helps us set the tone of why we're here, why we need this information, why we need to prove to them that we're worthy to work with their public. And just to introduce you, once you do get your license, there's some further education that the Real Estate Commission requires. Once you're licensed, you have 90 hours of post licensing that you have to complete. That 90 hours is broken down into 3 30-hour classes. So we're going to take some of the more heavily tested material from pre, and we're going to expand on it in post. You may want to make a note. You have 18 months from licensure to complete post licensing. So the day you get your license, you have 18 months or a year and a half to complete post licensing. And I'm going to talk a whole lot more about post licensing, of course, just introducing you to it. The other education that the Real Estate Commission requires, once you're licensed, we have to do continuing education each year. The good news is we only have to do 2 classes, 8 hours. Each class is 4 hours each. And again, we'll talk about CE, we'll talk about post licensing, but I think it helps emphasize what we said earlier. Guys, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. Once you get your license, your education, your training continues. If you want to be in real estate from 10 years from now, you got to understand and flow with the market. You got to move with those changes. You got to keep learning. You got to keep going. I've been in it for 23 years and I've known a lot of top producers. And you know what? There are 2 characteristics that I've been able to identify with my top producers. One of them, they always feed that pipeline. They never stop prospecting. They're always looking for buyers and sellers. We'll talk a little bit about that. But the other characteristic I've noticed in my top producers, they never stop learning. They continue to grow. They continue to advance their careers by knowledge and education. So when we say this is just the beginning, that's exactly what I mean. Question comes in, is there a set date for the state exam? No. So once you pass this class, you will schedule your state exam. And again, we'll walk through that. It's too early to do that now. So we'll walk through that. I usually do it about halfway through, because some of you may be ready to start your application. So give me a month or so, maybe a little over, and we'll cover that. Continuing education, we will talk about it, but it's just 8 hours. There's a required update. And then there's also an elective. The elective is a topic of your choosing. There's no tests in CE. There are tests with each post-licensing class. So once to complete post-licensing, you got to pass the test. I tell you though, right now, post-licensing is not near as intense as pre. So getting your license is the hard part. Once you get your license, now I'm not saying you're going to sail through post, you still need to commit. And then with CE, you just got to show up and be present, meet the criteria. And again, we'll talk more about both, just letting you know what you can expect. What questions do I have about anything so far? And while you guys are thinking, I need to stop sharing just for 1 second, so bear with me and let me know what questions we have so far.
I have a question.
Please.
In the book, the VIPs,
Mhm.
I started highlighting like every single one, but I say,
There's a
let me
lot.
wait. Yeah, exactly. So let me wait. So how does that work with the VIP tabs in the book?
I wouldn't so much pay attention to the VIP in the book because I'm going to point out very important topics as we go through. So remember, guys, there's several textbooks out there. The commission doesn't provide the book we're using. We chose to use this book because it's most in line with the syllabus. But with that being said, our main focus is still the syllabus. So those very important topics, Regina, thank you so much for your question. Those very important topics, I'll point out to you as we go. And I'm actually going to share with you in just a second how we can kind of identify the weight of the material to help you know what to spend most of your study time on. To Regina's point, also in your book, somewhere around the VIP on the left-hand margin, you might also see in North Carolina. What I do know is that's alerting you to a state-specific topic. So when you see in North Carolina, and again, I'm going to identify with you as well what is in North Carolina. So do we keep reading ahead every time we move on to the next day? Yes, my preference is you guys look ahead. So before we leave each day, I'm going to tell you what we're going to cover the next class. And that allows you to look ahead. And I understand reading it word for word may be challenging. So what I suggest is you look ahead. Look at the graphs, look at the pictures, look at the big points, expose yourself to the material. So when we come and talk about it the next class, you can say you've seen it before. If you can read, I think that's great, but it's tough and there's a lot. So let's try to help that. Also, you guys, looking ahead, you already have, when you register for this class, the email you got from Lane has one of my YouTube channels from a previous class. So if you would rather look ahead by looking at a YouTube channel, you guys already have access to that. Question comes in, what happens if you don't pass post-licensing? We offer a retake. This school offers a retake. I cannot answer for all schools, but this one offers a retake. And if you don't pass, then you got to retake the post-licensing class until you do. That's the only way you can get through post-licensing is to pass all 3 exams. And we got to keep that 18-month clock in our mind as well. So please don't wait until 16 and a half months to start your post. The recommendation is you try to get into post early so we can get it done. You can put it behind you and we can move on. What is the pass rate of the pre-licensing exam? We're up to about 65%. Does this class set us up to be licensed as well in another state? Great question, Shauna. And the answer is no. This is a North Carolina, and that's a great point. Guys, hear me. This is a North Carolina real estate exam. You may have experience in another state. Remember what we said about your personal experience. You're going to put it off to the side, especially if you have any kind of knowledge in another state. Please don't ask me about other states. I don't know. You know what I do know about? I know about North Carolina because that's the exam we're preparing you for. Anything else? So far. So we mentioned earlier about the weight, kind of the weight of the material. I'm getting ready to introduce you guys to my PowerPoints. Again, we're using Unit 1 as a warm-up. And I'm getting ready to introduce you to my PowerPoints. And there's a couple things you're going to see on my PowerPoints that'll help you identify the weight. One thing on each of my PowerPoints, you're going to see either a red star, a yellow star, or a green star. When you guys are calculator shopping, I recommend getting some highlighters. I would get a green highlighter, a yellow highlighter, and a pink or an orange highlighter. Also on my PowerPoints are the page numbers of the book. So you could follow along and highlight that section of the book, green, yellow, or orange, to know what to go back and study on, to know what to go focus your heavy attention. Level 1 is the very basic. Level 1 is the, what does this word mean? Level 2, we're going to go into a little bit more detail, some application material. And then level 3, y'all should be able to write your own book on the level 3 material. That's the kind of knowledge, that's the heavily tested material that we're going to address. So every single PowerPoint has a star on it. And instead of trying to write every word from the PowerPoint, you may want to reference that PowerPoint to the book with the different highlighters, the different levels, so you know how much energy to focus. All we're going to see in Unit 1 is green stars. Like I said, if it's worth testable in Unit 1, worth testing in Unit 1, we're going to get into it deeper in a future unit. Other things you guys may see on my PowerPoints. Things that have proven to be problem topics in the past. The Real Estate Commission provides us with problem topics for licensing examination. So we're going to identify those on our PowerPoints with a little arrow, problem topic, so we make sure you understand it. And then when we come to some state-specific stuff, you're going to see our great state flag to help you differentiate between national material and state-specific material. So with all that being said, what do y'all say? We just ready to get started? So we're going to start in Unit 1. I call Unit 1 our warm-up. Has anybody ever run a marathon? You know, before you run a marathon, you got to stretch, right? Unit 1 is stretching. The rest of this class is our marathon. So if we stretch, I offer us a roadmap or a guide on the more bigger topics in the units we're going to talk about. So in Unit 1, we're going to distinguish between land, real estate, real property, and personal property. We're going to describe some physical and economic characteristics of real property. There's pluses and minuses with owning real estate. So we're going to talk about some of those advantages and disadvantages. And then we're going to touch on supply and demand, and specifically how supply and demand relates to the real estate market. So when we go to our first slide, you can see at the top right, I have a green star. At the bottom right, everybody see that 2? That tells us what page number we're on. So you can keep up that way. A question comes in, will there be any test questions about Unit 1 on the test? If you do have a test question from Unit 1, it is in future units where we dig a little deeper. So we're warming up, we're introducing you, and I'll tell you what areas we're going to cover later that may be testable. We're introducing you to basic real estate concepts. So, real property versus personal property. Real property is defined as land and everything attached to it. May that be a tree, may that be a house, a fence, a driveway. Whatever we attach to land is real property or is attached to land. Personal property then is anything that's not real property. If you can pick it up and carry it, it's personal property. We will get more into real property and personal property in Unit 2. So just introducing you to it right now. I want to pause here for a second. I have a question for you guys. Has anybody ever heard, some of you may have heard, a lot of you come into this class being told that nothing you learn in pre-licensing is going to apply to your real estate career. You're not going to use anything. Has anybody ever heard that yet? Good, good, good. A couple of you. Well, I'm here to debunk that myth. Day 1, slide 1. Do you think buyers want to know what they get when they buy? Do you think buyers want to know, if I buy this house, what's going to stay and what's going to go? And to answer that question, we need to have an understanding of real property versus personal property. With that being said, I'm not going to stand here and pretend that everything you learn in pre-licensing you will use in the real world. I will never say that to you. But there is a lot that's going to help you build your career, that foundation that you will use on the regular. And again, having that basic understanding of what stays, what's real property versus what goes, what's personal property. More on this in Unit 2. We also need to differentiate between land, real estate, and real property. Now, we tend to use this interchangeably, but the truth is there is a difference. Land is defined as the surface, everything above it to infinity, and everything below it to the center of the earth. Land includes anything that's attached by nature. Anything that Mother Nature put there, trees, ponds, for example. When man adds a physical improvement to land, we get real estate. So once we put a house on it, a fence, a shed, once man comes along and does something, we're dealing with real estate. And when you take real estate and you add a homeowner's legal bundle of rights, what are the rights of a homeownership? That gives us real property. We're going to talk about that legal bundle of rights in Unit 2. We're going to describe the twigs and what those twigs mean. So land versus real estate versus real property. To talk about some physical characteristics of real property. Real property is immobile. It is where it is. You can't move land. The land is going to remain. With immobility, I always think of, when you go to Google Maps and it's got the little red tag and it says it is here. That is exactly where it is. It is right here. That's where the land is. Land is indestructible. Structures come and go, but the land will remain. And then land, real property, it's all unique. There is no two pieces, no two parcels of land, no two properties that are exactly the same. Every single piece of property is unique. Some economic characteristics of real property. We can remember this by remembering the mnemonic SLIP. Land is scarce. There's only so much land to go around. That's why a lot of cities, what do big cities do? They build up. You can only go out so far, right? Because you only got so much land. This explains why, for example, land on water might be a little bit more expensive, might be a little bit more rare, because there's only so many properties you can put around this lake or that pond or up and down the coast of North Carolina. Land is scarce. What's that all saying? Buy land, they're not making any more of it. So land is very scarce. I know you guys know this coming into this class. What are the 3 most important things about real estate? I'm going to rattle these off together. Location, location, location. Have you guys ever heard that? Location, location, location. Where is the land? Where is it at? Absolutely important. We're going to talk about some valuation methods, how we can value, or how the appraiser can value property. And location plays a play in that. Situs is just the individual's personal preference. We all have personal preferences for one location over another. By show of hands, who prefers the beach over the mountains? That's our situs. Who prefers the mountain over the beach? Who likes both, right? You may need to help your, but you guys are with me, right? That's your situs. That's your personal preference. Improvements to the land or any additions and changes. Again, building structures, streets, driveways. When man comes along, we improve on the land. Maybe they're good improvements, maybe they're not. And then permanence of investment. Once we build that structure, we expect this to be a long-term investment. When we build a building, we expect it to be around for years and years and years. We couldn't afford to build buildings if it's only going to be around for like 2 or something, right? Then it falls down. So the permanence of investment, it's not going to be around forever, but we can expect it to be around for a long time. Talking about use, how we use the land, a couple different terms. First off, highest and best use. We're going to talk more about this in Unit 17. Unit 17 is when we get to put on our appraiser's hat. We get to act like an appraiser for a minute. And appraisers will always consider highest and best use when they're putting value on a property. The highest and best use is the most profitable single use to which a property is currently being used. What makes the most profit? Maybe that's how it's currently being used, maybe it's not. But the appraiser is going to determine if the land is currently being used with its highest and best use. Where are my Winston-Salem people? Even if you're not from Winston, we can envision. My Winston-Salem people, you might be familiar with Thruway Shopping Center. Do we think Thruway Shopping Center has been there since the beginning of time? Probably not, right? Maybe once upon a time ago, Thruway Shopping Center was a cornfield. Maybe it was farmland, agricultural. As Winston-Salem started to grow out and our infrastructure changed, we had a need for retail. So eventually in time, that agricultural land was purchased, Thruway Shopping Center was built. Today, its highest and best use is going to be retail because you have easy access on and off the highway. Customers can get in and out. By the way, as a side note, that Chick-fil-A at Thruway, it's gone. They've leveled it. They're getting ready to rebuild it. I thought I was going there for lunch yesterday. I saw rubble. That's what we say. The land remains. Structures come and go, but the land's going to remain. I'm so excited about our new and improved Chick-fil-A coming soon. But the appraiser is always going to help us or help the consumer determine that highest and best use. Make a note more on this in Unit 17. Also talking about use, we have different uses on how we can use the land. So there's public controls. That's going to be our zoning. And there's also private controls. If you're in an HOA, for example, you may have to follow a set of restrictive covenants. Land use controls is Unit 6. So we're going to take a deep dive into zoning, covenants, and these land use controls. Questions so far? All right, it's break time, you guys. So let's take 10. We come back, we're going to finish one, and we're going to get started in 2. Welcome back. Halfway through of our first day. So cameras are coming back on. Tell me in the chat if you're here. I say when in doubt, just put it in the chat. Can't hurt, right? All right, so I'm going to take attendance. Again, you might see a little flash on your end. Let's talk a little bit more about Unit 1. So we talked about our use, our land use controls. Again, land use controls is the topic of Unit 6. So we'll spend some time talking about zoning, covenants, that kind of thing. Let's talk about real estate as an investment. There's good and bad. Maybe you own real estate, maybe you own your home, and so it's an investor to you as a homeowner. Maybe you're an investor and you're in the game of buying properties to either flip or rent out to tenants. No matter what, purchasing real estate is an investment, and there's good and bad to everything. So some advantages to real estate as an investment. You can generally get a good rate of return. Depending on the market. Real estate is a market. Markets fluctuate. And so if we're not in a great market, you may not get that good rate of return. But if we are in a good market, and we're going to talk more about those markets and what makes a good market or not. Values tend to keep pace with inflation. So when inflation goes up, our values tend to go up. Maybe you can turn around and sell it when you're ready for profit. And then also with real estate, there may be some possible tax advantages. Another big piece of this class is teaching you guys to stay in your lane. Well, we don't know what your lane is yet, right? So we're going to teach you what that lane is. And by staying in your lane, you need to know when to send your buyers and sellers to another expert. So for example, when it comes to tax advantages, I'm not here to teach you guys how to be accountants. We're not in accounting school. So with your buyers and sellers, we're going to recommend that they talk to their accountant. That's how we can stay in our lane, sending them to the people that we know can help them. We're not expected to answer tax advantage questions, but we are expected to be the source of the source. Drive them to the people that can. So we'll teach you your lane as we go along as well. Make sure you stay in it. Some disadvantages for real estate. Real estate's not liquid. Who can tell me what I mean by that? What does it mean not to be liquid?
It means that you can't sell it and get like cash value of it for it.
That's right. It's not fast cash. If I need money today, I'm not going to get it from my real estate investment. If I want to sell my house, I'll put it on the market, get a buyer, we'll close, da-da-da-da-da. I get money in a couple months, but I'm not getting money today. If you need money today, your liquid assets are your savings account, your CDs, your bonds, your stocks, that kind of thing. Things that can easily convert into cash. I'll get you cash from your real estate, but it's not liquid. We're not going to get you cash today. It takes time. Another disadvantage to real estate is it could get expensive. I already told you guys we're not accountants. Guess what? We're also not attorneys. We're not in law school. I can't answer legal questions. So we may have to tell our consumers, our buyers and sellers, to seek legal advice, to seek tax counsel, which can add up. So it could be, a little expensive for real estate investment. There's work involved to grow your money, to grow your investment. You own a property for 30 years. At some point, there's a really good chance you're going to have to put a new roof on it or do some kind of upgrade or some kind of improvement. You can't buy a house, not touch it for 30 years, and then expect to turn around and get a profit out of it. Does that make sense? So there's work involved so you can get that final outcome. And then there can be at times be a high degree of risk depending on the market that we're in, what's going on right now. More on that in just a second. So what's the scope of our business? Well, the brokerage piece is why you guys are all here, to become real estate brokers. Brokerage is the business of bringing people together in this real estate transaction. How many of you want to go into sales where you work with buyers and sellers? Probably most of you. Commercial or residential, right? That could go either way. Anybody in property management or plan to be in property management where you're going to work with landlords and tenants? Few of you. So that's brokeraging the deal. Whether you're bringing buyers and sellers together or you're bringing landlords and tenants together, that's brokeraging the deal. And that's what we're doing here. This class is heavy on residential sales. I do have a unit for property management. We'll get to that. We kind of hint around commercial, not too much in that field. I will say this, no matter what avenue you're going, sales, residential, commercial, property management, no matter what avenue you're going, additional training and education is required. So we're just scratching surfaces no matter where, but we do get the most on residential sales. We do spend most of our time talking about buyers and sellers. Brokerage isn't the only scope of the real estate business. The appraisal business, the appraiser's job is to estimate value, to determine what would a reasonable buyer be willing to pay for this property. I got a whole unit dedicated to appraisal, so we will talk about that in Unit 17. Property management, you are managing a property for somebody else, for the owner, for the landlord. As mentioned, we got a unit for property management. It's Unit 12. Financing, most people need help financially to buy a home. So that's where our mortgage lenders come in. I got 2 units on financing. Units 14 and 15, we get to put on our mortgage lender's hat. Property development, builders, developers, maybe that builder, maybe you're a builder yourself, you're building a home or you're developing an entire subdivision. That's another scope. Counseling is offering advice. I think it's important that we understand coming into this as real estate agents. I'm a fact finder. I help provide the facts. I help provide the information for them to make an informed decision. Am I the one buying this house? Am I the one taking on a 30-year mortgage? No. I'm providing my buyers, in some case sellers, the information, and that's where I'm going to counsel them. I'm going to offer them advice, understanding I cannot make anybody do anything, or at least I yet to figure it out. I'm a fact finder. I provide the facts. I help them gather an information so they can make that informed decision. If you're here because you want to tell people what to do and what house to buy, it doesn't work like that. Education, big piece of education. That's why we're here right now in our pre-licensing class. We've mentioned post-licensing. We've mentioned your CE. There's other education though, you guys. We got other professional organizations that we're going to introduce you to as we go that offer education. So for example, has anybody ever heard of the National Association of Realtors or the Realtors? Yep, that's a professional organization. Once you join NAR, they provide training, they provide education. The Real Estate Commission has additional training. There's the state level of NAR. It's the North Carolina Association of Realtors. Guess what? They offer training, they offer education. And you also have a local level. So for example, there's the Winston-Salem Board of Realtors. There's the High Point Board of Realtors, the Triangle Board of Realtors. There's one in Charlotte called Canopy. I think there's like 40 some local realtor associations across the state. Once you join your firm will assist you in joining these professional organizations. We're just letting you know now the training, the education is out there. Back to the Real Estate Commission. The Real Estate Commission doesn't just educate future brokers and licensees. The Real Estate Commission also helps to educate the public. They're going to help to educate the ones that they're out there to protect. So at some point between now and the end of the class, we're going to go check out the North Carolina Real Estate Commission's website. We're going to poke around in there for a bit, and we're going to see that there's a plethora of information out there to not only assist us when we're working with the public, but to help educate them as well. And then there might be some government programs, some government offices that dabble in real estate. For example, zoning. Those that work in zoning have this scope of business. Let me say this about, let's go back to the National Association of Realtors. And by the way, there's a nice little chart on page 10 for you that talks about NAR and some other professional organizations. Not that we're going to get bogged down in these yet, but just to kind of introduce you to. Once you join your firm may or may not require you to join the National Association of Realtors. If you do join the National Association of Realtors, then you get to call yourself a realtor. You know that capital R, have you ever seen that capital R that we get to rock? If you're not a member of NAR, you cannot call yourself a realtor. To become a realtor, you first have to become a broker. Once you're a broker, you join your firm, and your firm will advise you on how to get access to NAR. Let me say this, and let me think for a second before I say it, because I always got to make sure I say it right. All realtors are brokers, but not all brokers are realtors. Can I do that again? All realtors are brokers. So how do you become a realtor? You first have to become a broker. But not all brokers are realtors. So when you get your license, you're a broker, and then you take that next step through the advisement of your firm. But there's so many different avenues in real estate, so many different things you can explore. And in the brokerage piece of it, and the working with buyers and sellers and tenants and landlords, it all starts here. Some uses of property, residential usage is your housing, your dwellings, where we live. There's commercial uses. So these are our businesses. Maybe it's retail, maybe it's restaurant, maybe it's an office park. Real estate or real property can have industrial uses. These are our warehouses and factories. Agricultural is our farmlands. And then special uses has the category of like our churches, schools, cemeteries, that kind of thing. All of these have subclasses. So you can't just say residential. You need to, most areas specifically say single family residential or multifamily residential. How many families can live on that property if it's single family residential? Just one. Just one. So if you want to rent that apartment over your garage out to the college student and they're not part of your family, you might be violating that zoning, for example. Get into zoning in Unit 6. Now, if it's multifamily, you could move half the university in on your land, right? But if it's single family, and that's what we mean by the subclasses. It's also not uncommon, especially as we get downtown anywhere, to see mixed use. So for example, we might have a building where the bottom floor is commercial, restaurants and retail, maybe a store, but the second, third, fourth floor are residential, apartments or condos. So that would be a mixed use. All of these have subclasses. All of these mean different things depending on where you are. And again, more on that when we get to zoning. And then the last little piece of section 1 or unit 1, it's talking about real estate as a market. Please always understand, always remember, real estate is a market and markets fluctuate. I always imagine the real estate market on like a pendulum. So we go from a seller's market to a buyer's market, back to a seller's market. That pendulum is constantly moving. Anybody familiar with what's going on in real estate in the last couple of years? Anybody try to buy a house in the last couple of years? My hat's off to you. 2 years ago, real estate was a super strong seller's market. They were originating interest rates at 2 point something, 3 point something, and we didn't have any inventory. So demand for real estate was absurd. Sellers were in the driver's seat and they knew it. Today, we're still in a seller's market, absolutely, but not as strong as what we were. We're seeing that pendulum come down. And one day, I don't know when, 5 years from now, 12 years from now, we're going to be back in a buyer's market. And we're in a buyer's market. Who's in control now? The buyers. They're the ones driving. Real estate is constantly, sometimes this thing moves faster than the other, but this thing is constantly moving. We're constantly switching markets. Now in real estate, we don't sit around and talk about supply and demand, but what we do talk about is a buyer's market and a seller's market. As indicated, a seller's market means supply is low, but demand is very high. That was our problem 2 years ago. There was a demand. Are you kidding me? A 2 point something % interest rate on a house? The demand was high, but guess what? We didn't have the supply. We didn't have the inventory. That's what created that strong seller's market. As that pendulum switched back, we're going to see our supply and demand switch. When we're in a buyer's market, we have high supply, but we don't have as high demand. And that's what we talk about. That's what you're going to hear agents sit around and talk about is buyer's market and seller's market. This is your economic 101 lesson for the day. And it's part of that pendulum fluctuating, that market constantly moving. Being the expert of your market is a big part of real estate. I'm telling you guys right now, people love to talk about real estate. And as soon as you tell them I have my license, as soon as you tell them I'm a broker, they're going to want to know, what's the market like? What's going on in the market? And if we're the experts, if we're knowledgeable, aren't they more likely to call us when they're ready to buy or sell, as opposed to, I don't know. It's just what I do for a living, but I don't know what's going on in the market right now. They may not want to call you. Makes sense, right? To be in the experts of our market, understanding what's going on. That may be a national market. It might be just central location to your market, your area. But we watch trends. We see stuff. And there's all sorts of people out there that can predict stuff or think they can. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. But when you watch those trends, when you watch that market, that pendulum, you can start to have a better understanding, have a better idea, and have a conversation about it. One down, so many to go. So as a reminder, at the end of each unit, I remind you, there's those key terms on page 1, that key point review, the abbreviated version on page 15, and then you got that student quiz on page 17. And like I said, we're going to look at a couple test questions, quiz questions from the end of unit 1 on Thursday to help you learn how to work your way through some of these test questions once they start getting more complex. What questions do I have on unit 1? All right, forward we go. Unit 2, we're going to talk about some property ownership and some interests. For those of you that looked ahead, there's some weird stuff going on in Unit 2, right? There's some weird stuff going on. So we're going to talk about that, what we need to know. A question comes in, so just make sure we go over it. Yes. Make sure you know what those key terms mean. Make sure you understand what's in the key point review and pass the end of unit quiz. You want to review what we've covered each class so you know where you stand on that material. So with Unit 2, our property ownership and interests, our guide, our roadmap, we're going to spend some more time on real property and personal property. So we're going to differentiate between the two, talk more about each of those. We're going to define something called an estate, and we're going to talk about the different types of estates. We're going to explain the different forms of ownership. There's not just one way you can own property. So we're going to talk about those different forms. And then we're going to talk about some common interest communities. So for example, condominiums, townhomes, that kind of thing, common interest communities. We will not get through Unit 2 today, but we'll get as far as we get. And then that'll let us know where we're going to pick up on Thursday. We're ready to jump in. Refresher from way back in Unit 1, we define land, we define real property, and real estate, and then we define real property. And one thing we said about real property, once man has come along and put a physical improvement on the property, that's real estate. When you add to it a homeowner's legal bundle of rights, that's what gives us real property. You take those physical improvements. When people own property, they get rights. And this bundle of legal rights helps us remember what owners are going to get, owners of real property. So let's define the twigs in our legal bundle of rights. And one easy way to help us remember this is to remember deep C. So our D twig is our disposition twig. As the homeowner, you have the right to dispose of your property. As a homeowner, you have the right to sell it, or you could gift it. You have the right to dispose of it. Our first E twig is our enjoyment twig. The enjoyment twig says that the owner has the right to use the property however they want, as long as it's in the confines of the law. Nobody's allowed to break the law. When we talk about law and real estate, we're talking about zoning. We're talking about restrictive covenants. So you have the right to use your property and to enjoy your property in any legal manner without interference from others. As the owner of record, that's a twig that you get. Our other E twig is our exclusion twig. You have the right to restrict access. You have the right to say who can and cannot come on your property. You ever seen homes with a no trespassing sign up? They're exercising their exclusion twig. They're saying, I don't want you on my property. They're excluding you. The possession twig then is the opposite of our exclusion twig. The possession twig says, I have the right to say who can come on my property. I have the right to say who can occupy it. And then the control twig says that I have the right to, I could profit from my property. Maybe I want to rent it out to a tenant. I have the right to control that and do that. Maybe I want to plant an orchard, grow grapes so I can make my own wine. I have the right to do that. Again, I can control my property. I can profit from the property as long as we're in the framework of the law. Nobody is allowed to break the law, no matter what you own. And so while we own these legal bundle of rights, this is what you get when you own. They might as well hand you a bundle of twigs, right? And they say, when you buy a home, this is what you get. Congratulations, these are your twigs. I think it's important that we understand that our bundle of legal rights can be unbundled. And we can give away some of those rights. So for example, if you want to rent your property out, you need to give some of those twigs to your tenants, right? The tenants now should be able to have that exclusion and that possession twig, for example. So giving up some of that control, giving up some of those twigs, our legal bundle of rights can be unbundled just as easily as they can be bundled. So we've seen nothing but green stars so far. Get ready for your first yellow star. We're just jumping right in, aren't we? Our first yellow star and our first big fancy real estate word. And that word is appurtenant. If something is appurtenant, it means it runs with the land. What do I mean by that? It's conveyed, it's transferred through the sale from one owner to the next, to the next, to the next. It's a right or a privilege that goes with the land. We have several things that are appurtenant that we will talk about next. We're going to talk about your subsurface rights. We're going to talk about your air rights. And we're going to talk about those water rights. When your property is adjacent to water, for example, what do you need to know about water rights? Before we do that, though, let me get this out. The Real Estate Commission says for your exam, we're going to consider improvements appurtenant. So in other words, when you buy a property, there's probably a structure on it. There's a house, maybe there's a fence, maybe there's a shed. Those improvements, that driveway, the electricity, all of those improvements are considered appurtenant, which means they run with the land. They convey from one owner to the next. As a quick side note, these are used interchangeably a lot, but there is a difference between improved land and an improved lot. An improved land has the home. It has the property. An improved lot doesn't have the home yet, but it has the services it needs to build. So it's plumbed, it's got electricity, it's got your fiber optics for your internet. We just haven't built a house yet. Again, just to distinguish, we use these interchangeably. The important thing to remember about any improvements is they are considered appurtenant. And if something is appurtenant, it means it runs with the land. We're going to talk about several appurtenant things in the first couple units. So as mentioned, we have several different rights. We got some subsurface rights, some water rights, some air rights. So let's talk about our rights and what is appurtenant about them. One appurtenant right is our subsurface rights. Subsurface rights are referring to the minerals and the oils and the gases under the ground. Those subsurface rights can be severed, which means somebody could purchase those rights from you. Somebody could lease those rights from you. So if you had gases or oils or minerals under your property, they could offer to purchase those or rent them out. It's a legal matter. It's a legal process. This got out of severing subsurface rights, got out of the real estate agent's scope. So this would be another place where we bring in attorneys. When we get to Unit 8, we're going to work with buyers and sellers in Unit 8. And we're going to learn that there's actually a form, a disclosure, that the seller is required to provide the buyer to let them know if they have severed those subsurface rights or if they intend to sever. Can everybody agree with the statement that a buyer deserves to know what they're buying? Can we agree with that? So if a buyer's going to buy a home and they won't have access to the mineral rights, So in other words, once those minerals are discovered, they're sold and that homeowner gets nothing. That's what it means to be severed, or very little. Doesn't a buyer have the right to know that? And that's part of our seller disclosure. Again, that's a form that we'll actually see. What we need to know right now is our subsurface rights are pertinent and they can be severed from the property, from the homeowner. Another right that's impertinent is our air rights. Remember, we defined land as everything above it to the infinity. If you live near an airport, your air rights have been severed. Anybody live near PTI or RDU or Charlotte or anything like that? Can you go out in your front yard and put a sign up that says FedEx, don't fly a plane over my house? I mean, you can, but how far is it going to get you? Those rights have been severed. FedEx, airports had to go to the judge. This is a court ordered thing. They're not going to come knocking on your door asking you permission to fly their plane over your home, but they go to a judge and they get those rights. And if they do have those rights, there's nothing you can do to stop that plane from flying over your property. What we're looking at here is PTI Airport in Greensboro, and all around PTI are residential neighborhoods. If you're helping your buyer buy in a home near PTI, we need to make sure that they understand planes can and will fly over your home. Those rights have been severed. Any improvement is appurtenant. I'll say most real properties are pertinent. I want you guys to understand anything is negotiable. You may write that down. Anything is negotiable. And as we start talking about real property and personal property, what we're talking about is typically buyer and seller can negotiate anything in or out as long as it's legal. We're not getting into the what ifs because we would never stop, but we can get into the things that are typically going to convey, things that are typically not, unless the parties agree otherwise. So if our subsurface rights can be severed, our air rights can be severed. Another pertinent right are our water rights, and they cannot be severed. If you own property adjacent to a body of water, those rights belong to whoever owns that body of water. And we got two different types of water rights, depending on the type of the body of water that we're on. The first type of water rights are riparian rights. Riparian rights are bodies of water without a tide. I would write that down. Riparian equals no tide. If it helps, sometimes if we can make a play on words when we see riparian, can you see river, or at least the start of river? Rivers don't have a tide. Lakes, ponds, streams, creeks, those are all our riparian rights. No tide. And we got two different types of riparian rights. The first type of riparian rights are those in a body of water on a non-navigable stream. Non-navigable meaning I can't get a vessel down it. I can't get a boat. So think about streams, creeks. With non-navigable streams, the riparian's right says that the owner's share on either side of the stream or creek, the owners own to the center of the stream. Your property line will go to the center of the stream. Think of non-navigable stream, think of it as like a shared driveway. If you share a driveway with somebody, you both own part of that driveway. Our other type of riparian rights then is our navigable bodies of water. These are bodies of water that you can get a vessel down. And with navigable riparian rights, the owner owns to the bank, to the edge. Now, let me address something, because I know a lot of us have experience with lakes, for example. And those lakes may allow you to put your dock in their body of water. Did you hear what I just said? You are putting your dock in their body of water. Whether or not you're allowed to do that is going to depend on the rules of that body of water. So Belews Creek, Lake Jordan. If you see a dock and a body of water, generally speaking, they have permission to be there. It's not their body of water. Your test is not going to ask you about whether or not Lake Jordan will allow you to put a dock in it. Your test is going to ask you where you own for riparian rights. Where do you own? You're going to own to the water's edge. You're going to own to the bank. So riparian is our bodies of water without a tide. Riparian is no tide. Our other water rights are littoral rights. These are bodies of water with a tide. So now we're down east. We're down on the ocean or possibly the sound. Anybody live at the coast? I didn't see that come across, but if you do, I'm like super jealous because I'm working to get down there. That's the retirement plan, by the way. I'm getting a condo down east somewhere. With littoral rights, the owner owns to the average high tide line. The average high tide line. High tide to low tide is considered the foreshore. That belongs to the state of North Carolina. That's what allows us to walk up and down the beach. Low tide to international waters is owned by the US government. International waters out is owned by however they divvy that out. Are we lagging? A little bit. Yeah, here, do you have a question?
Can you repeat that about the tide?
So the owner owns, what littoral rights say is that the owner owns to the high tide mark. That's what we need to know about littoral rights. From high tide to low tide is the foreshore. That's what we can walk. When we're walking up and down the beach, that's thanks to the state of North Carolina. Low tide to international waters is owned by the US government.
Okay, one more time. Repeat. Because when I read it, I started getting a little confused.
So high tide is what the owners own to. That's your boundary.
Okay.
What's the foreshore?
If we can walk on the beach.
Which is your high tide to low tide mark.
Okay.
And after the low tide, we're looking at US government till we get to international waters. I honestly don't know. I don't remember how far out international waters is. You do not need to know that for your North Carolina real estate.
What, 25 miles?
I have no idea.
Yeah. I was in the Navy.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
I think it was like 25 miles.
That's a good ways out, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Big old ocean. So again, you
Okay,
guys, water rights. I'm sorry?
High tide to low tide is public beach access.
For sure, yes.
For sure. Okay.
So our water rights, everybody good? Are we looking at riparian rights? Are we looking at littoral rights? The answer is, what type of body of water are we adjacent to? if it has a tide or it does not have a tide. Questions on our tides, our water rights, subsurface rights, or our air rights? Question comes in, will this be on the exam? If it's in the syllabus, it's a good candidate for your state exam. This class was written with the syllabus in my hand. So I guess the question I'm getting, are riparian and littoral rights in the syllabus? And the answer is yes. If we're talking about it, it's a good candidate for your state exam. That's why we're here. Speaking of, also in the syllabus, just to mention real quick, I would not get bogged down in this. Hopefully we're not writing everything anyway, because remember you guys all have my PowerPoints and we're recording. But not to get bogged down in it, there's something called the doctrine of prior appropriation. We're probably not going to deal with this here in North Carolina. So if, and I'm stressing the word if, you see this, it'll be on your national section. But this doctrine of prior appropriation applies to Western states. Western states don't use riparian rights rules. They use this doctrine of prior appropriation. And basically what this says is the first person that claims beneficial use of the water rights wins. So you might be adjacent to land out or to water out west that you don't have the right to use because of the doctrine of prior appropriation. Some other terms when it comes to water, again, just to be familiar with. These are things, so you might want to restart, Stephanie, maybe to log out, log back in. Try that. Yep. So with different water rights, these are different just terms that can affect the boundaries. The boundaries if you own property adjacent to bodies of water. Accretion is the gradual increase in land because, you know, swiftly moving rivers can redeposit land. So after a while, if enough land comes from upstream and it settles here, you've gained land due to accretion. Reliction is the increase of land because your water line recedes. The river goes down, the creek goes down, you can see more land than what you did. That would be reliction. Erosion is the gradual wearing away of land because of the flowing water. So that water, it just got land from upstream. It's eroding up here, depositing further downstream. And then avulsion can affect the property. These are sudden acts of nature. So think of like a mudslide or a landslide, for example. These could get into some legalities. It could be with the local government on what happens when you lose or gain land. They probably have some kind of rules in place about how it happens when that happens. Landowners also have the rights to have their property, their land supported. There's a couple different types of support for your property. Lateral support is the right to have your property supported when your neighbor starts digging. So for example, if you happen to own a house next to these guys, you see all those retention walls? They're digging down and they're digging away with those retention walls that your land isn't going to slide down. That's lateral support. You have that right. You have the right to not have adjacent properties affect your boundaries. Another support right is our subjacent support. This is under the surface. think the best example of our subjacent support are our coal mines up in West Virginia. Those homeowners that live on the surface, those miners are like miles beneath the surface. And as they're down there digging and doing their thing, you have the right to have your property supported so it doesn't cave in and fall down. And those are your subjacent supports. Questions so far? So the next piece of Unit 2 is talking more about our personal property and real property. So again, as a refresher, the whole way back from Unit 1, we define personal property, basically anything that's not real property. Y'all want a good visual? Pick your house up, turn it upside down, and shake it. If it comes loose, it's personal property. If it doesn't, it's real property. Real property are things that are attached, permanently attached. Our light fixtures, our cabinets, for example, are going to be real property. Personal property can also be referred to as personality or chattel. Real estate's one of those fun industries that we have multiple words that mean the same thing. We also have words that have two different meanings. Oh, it's a good time in real estate. Again, we're teaching you guys how to speak broker starting today. And again, the distinction, the characteristic of personal property, you can pick it up and move it. It's a movable item. Yes, ma'am, Jennifer.
I just had a question. So is it tricky when it comes to like appliances like refrigerators and things like that? Because I know a lot of the time they're in the house, but you can take them, right? If you
So
like
the
own that
answer to
house.
that is it depends. And in just a second, one thing, a tool that we have for our advantage, when we look at our sales contract, it gives us a list of things that are considered fixtures, a list of things that are going to remain unless negotiated otherwise. And we're going to look at that list in just a second. But then from there, our sales contract also has the opportunity for us to exclude or include. So if buyers wants to be sure that this item is here, then we can include it as a term in the sales contract. Because you're right, Jennifer, some things aren't as cut and dry, right? So we can start with our contract. And then you guys are going to learn from me. I operate by several super simple philosophies. And one of my super simple philosophy is when in doubt, write it out. So if your buyer wants to make sure this fixture's here when they buy that house, write it out. And then that way it's part of the contract and we know it's part of that agreement. Somebody's asking about trailers. We're going to talk about trailers in just a second. Are trailers real property or personal property? The answer is, it depends. So we'll see those in just a bit. By the way, you know this about me now. When I say just a bit, it could be 5 minutes, it could be 5 weeks from now. So we'll get to it. But we will see trailers in just a few slides. So one thing that comes up with real property versus personal property is our plants. Fructose naturals, fancy words. These are plants that don't require annual cultivation. These are our trees and our bushes and our shrubs, things that you plant and they're done. These are considered real property. That's what RP is, real property. Fructose industrials then are our crops. So the things that we plant year after year after year, corn, wheat, soy. Whether or not fructose industrials, fruits of the industry, whether or not they are real property or personal property depends. If we are conveying a property for sale, those fruits of the industry are considered real property. Which means if you sell your farm and there are crops on them, the new owner acquires your crops. They're real property and they convey unless agreed otherwise. Could we agree otherwise? Could we negotiate otherwise? Sure. Why? Because anything is negotiable. If you are a tenant farmer and you plant crops and your lease runs out, those crops are considered personal property, which means as a tenant farmer, you have the right at the end of the season to come harvest that year's crop. Now you can't plant new, but they're considered personal property, which means once your corn is ready, you can come back, harvest your corn. Again, unless agreed otherwise. But we're not going to get in to the unless agreed otherwise, because again, you got this. That's a rabbit hole. That's a never ending rabbit hole. I'm going to encourage you guys right now. When you guys read test questions, when you guys read this material, you like to say, well, what about this? What if we negotiated? I'm going to encourage you now to squash the what about and the what if, because you're setting yourself up to run down a rabbit hole that's getting you off topic of the question. Always stay with the question. Don't read into it. Read the question. I promise the information you need to answer that question is in there without you throwing in the what ifs and the what abouts and running down that rabbit hole. None of us in here is named Alice. So we're not going to be Alice in Wonderland. We're not going to go chasing that cat down the rabbit hole. We're going to stick to the question. Fair enough? As soon as you start saying, well, what if you run down that rabbit hole? And that's not what we're testing. Your what if could be different than my what if, could be different than their what if, right? So you're reading into the question, you're making things up. And before y'all start that habit, let's not. All right, it's break time. We get back, we're going to talk more about fixtures and more about what typically stays unless agreed otherwise. So let's take 10, our last break of the day. Welcome back. So I'm going to, cameras are coming back on. And I can see, remember it's twofold. So I'm going to take attendance. And let's talk more about this real property and personal property. So with real property, personal property, things that are real property can become personal property. Things that are personal property can become real property. Some basic words. Severance is detaching something. You're converting it from real property to personal property. Annexation is attaching it. You're converting it from personal property to real property. So let's talk about a ceiling fan. Let's say you have a ceiling fan in your home and you just don't care for that ceiling fan, and it just kind of makes you a little angry every time you walk in the room because you do not like that ceiling fan. Can you take it down? Yeah, well, first off, let me ask you this. Isn't it real property right now? Is it falling out of the ceiling? Is it falling on your head? That's attached in a way that it's meant to be permanent, right? So that would be considered real property. Can you take it down? Yeah, once you take it down, you've converted it. You have severed it. You have disconnected it. It's no longer real property. It's personal property. Then you run out to Lowe's or Home Depot and you buy a new ceiling fan. Those comes in a box that we can carry, right? When you're walking out of Lowe's, walking into your home, that's personal property. You attach it and affix it, you annex it in such a way that it becomes real property. So things can be severed, things can be annexed. If we're attaching something to make it real property, we're attaching it in such a way that it's meant to be permanent. The old saying is nailed, screwed, or glued, bolted or welded, attached in a way that we are meaning to make it permanent. We converted that ceiling fan from personal property that we carried in the front door to real property. Now that it's attached, now that it's real property, you pick your house up and shake it, that ceiling fan's not going anywhere. Y'all ready for your first red star? We're not playing. Everybody ready? Your first red star is to talk about and understand fixtures. A fixture is something that was once personal property, but it's been converted in such a way that it's now considered real property. How do we convert it? Nailed, screwed, or glued, bolted or welded it. We attached it in a way that it became permanent, and that is a fixture. Could sellers take fixtures with them? Let's say the seller has some kind of emotional attachment to that ceiling fan. Could they take it with them when they move? Sure, sure. Why? Because anything is negotiable. They could take it down, they could put a new ceiling fan up. I want you guys to turn with me in your book. We kind of hit on this a few minutes ago, but pages 26 and 27. What we're looking at on 26 and 27 is a piece from our sales contract. Now we're going to get into our sales contract in Unit 10. So we're going to see more in depth the sales contract. This list in your book isn't the most current list, but we will look at the most current list when we look at the offer to purchase and contract in Unit 10. But this gives us an idea. If you're using this contract, these things on this list have been considered, have been identified as fixtures. And fixtures, unless agreed otherwise, are pertinent. This exact same list also shows up in the listing agreement that we use for the seller to hire us to sell their home. Listing agreements, buyer's agency agreements, those are all coming in Unit 8. So listing agents, When you're meeting with a seller and you have this listing agreement with this very same list, the current list, you and your seller are going through this list because you want to know if the seller plans on taking any of these items. Am I going to look at a seller and say, no, you cannot take grandma's antique chandelier? Sorry, it's appurtenant. It's going to stay. The new homeowner is going to enjoy your grandmother's antique chandelier. Is that what we're going to do? No, we're going to have conversations with the seller. We're going to understand what it is, what their intention is. So the seller says, well, this chandelier, this is my grandma's and it's been passed down generations after generations. And this fixture means a whole lot to me. Okay, so we got some options. In a perfect world, the seller would take down grandma's antique chandelier and replace it with something comparable in that space. Don't leave me a string on a light or light bulb on a string, right? But put up another fixture, put up another chandelier before I ever show up for picture day, before a buyer ever sees grandma's antique chandelier. In a perfect world, the seller would take it down, buyer would never see it. It's not an issue, right? Do we live in a perfect world? No. Some sellers may look at you and say, I've never eaten a meal not being under grandma's antique chandelier, and I'm not going to start now. I'm not taking this down until I move out. Listing agents, you now have the responsibility to let every buyer that views that home know that when they buy this home, that chandelier won't be there. That is a fixture that will be excluded. How do you tell them that? I don't care. Maybe you put it in the listing service. Maybe you tell their agent, maybe you put a tag on it talking about does not convey. I don't care how. It's our job to let all future buyers or all potential buyers know that when they buy this home, the seller's going to take that fixture. And y'all know people, right? You're gonna have buyers walking, I'd buy this house if I could get the chandelier. So sometimes it's just easier if we can get the sellers to take it down. But again, you guys remember, I can't make anybody do anything. All we can do is have these conversations, set those expectations. Also, listing agent, when that offer comes in, it's our job to make sure that that chandelier has been excluded. Make sure that they understand that that is a fixture that will not remain. And that may be part of the negotiations. Let's see, Amari, I saw a question. Is it Amari?
Yes. So how does that affect like the appraisal process if there are fixtures in the home that the buyer may or may not want to include in the selling process? How would
And
that?
that's a great question. And it's all rolled into the cost of the home. So when we said the seller's going to replace it with something comparable, it means it's going to fit that space. If it's a formal dining room, then it's going to be a really nice chandelier. If it's just a breakfast area or something, we could get away with a smaller fixture, but we're still going to leave them something. We're not going to leave them with a hole in the ceiling. We're still going to have something there. So it's not going to affect the value. Remember, grandma's antique chandelier is only valuable to you. You might be able to put a price tag on it, but you're the one that has the value. Buyers just see it as a chandelier, something in that space.
Thank you.
Of course. Fixtures and personal property can and sometimes often are negotiable. There's one thing on this list that you're not seeing, and I know it's hard for us not to see what we're not seeing, but probably the number one, the most common personal property. Remember, personal property is not a fixture. Personal property means it's going to go. And the number one negotiated personal property item is the refrigerator. The refrigerator is not considered a fixture. The refrigerator just slides right in, right? Uses the same outlet as my hair dryer does. There's nothing special about it as far as real property. It's just plugged in. It's not attached. With that being said, I'm going to say the refrigerator is the number one negotiable personal property item. Right behind that would be the washer and dryer. Keeping in mind that anything can be negotiable. So when your buyer walks in the front door and they say, wow, that's a nice dining room suite. I just don't like the chandelier. I like the table and the china cabinet and the credenza. Could they ask for that? Could they ask the seller for that? Sure, anything's negotiable. What are you willing to pay? That's a different negotiation. I understand, but you guys are with me, right? Anything's negotiable. We have places in our contract to exclude fixtures and include personal property, all depending on the negotiations between buyer and seller. So just, again, this list just kind of gives us an idea. If you're using a different contract other than standard form 2T, this list could look different. But we show you this list because one, this is the one that's most commonly used. And two, this is the one that corresponds to our more commonly used listing agreement as well. So listing agents have these conversations up front. Buyer's agents, we can ask our buyer up front, do you need a refrigerator or you want to go out and buy your own? Because if they need one, then that may make or break them with this property, right? If the seller's not willing to leave the fridge, then that may make a difference. So we can have these conversations up front. Every single seller is different. Every single buyer is different. Every single property is different. And the unique combination of those three things makes for a different transaction every single time. So what if? I'm going to throw a what if at you. What if buyer and seller start haggling over a fixture or over a personal property? Let's put real estate aside for a second. Let's pretend that real estate doesn't even exist. Bottom line, if two parties can't agree to agree, then the judge can decide for them. And sometimes these fixtures, sometimes these things wind up in court. I have always heard this fixture list we're looking at, this is the result of some lawsuit. This is the result of some court case. And we're adding to, like I said, this isn't the most up to date. Last year when they updated our offer to purchase and contract, they added attached exercise equipment because during the pandemic, everybody ran out and got some kind of exercise equipment or a tonal mirror, and they attached it. What do we know about annexation? Annexation. If it's permanently attached, nailed, screwed, or glued, bolted, or welded, then it becomes a fixture. So during the pandemic, people ran out, got those tonal workout mirrors and attached it, and then they went to sell their house and they thought they were going to take it with them. Because I don't know, I guess those things cost a lot of money. But once you attach it, it is attached in such a way that it's meant to be, then it's a fixture. But because there was enough hubbub about it, we're now going to see that in our current fixture list in our offer to purchase and contract. So I say that to say that our forms, our laws, our rules are updating, they're evolving, they're keeping up with society, they're keeping up with what's going on. And I'm not say every update with the offer to purchase and contract, but a good number of them, we can expect to see a new fixture. Once it's been ruled a fixture by the courts, then we're going to understand that going forward. So if the parties have to go stand in front of a judge to determine if something is a fixture or not, if they can't agree to agree, the judge is going to perform what's known as the total circumstance test. And the total circumstance test is the test that the judge is going to use to rule this is a fixture or this is personal property. And the judge is going to ask, in conducting this test, the judge is going to ask a series of questions. And we can remember those questions by remembering IRMA. The judge is going to want to know what's the intent of the annexor. The annexor is the one that annexed it, the one that attached it. What was their intent? Did they mean for it to be permanent? Or did they mean for it to be temporary? What was their intent? Who is the annexor? What's their relationship to the object? If it's an owner, they probably mean for it to be permanent. If it's a tenant, the owner is going to mean for it to be permanent, yeah. If it's a tenant, They may mean for it to be temporary. So the relationship of the annexor, how was it attached? Like, how permanent are we talking about? Can we remove it easily without causing damage? Like, for example, the ceiling fan? Or has it been bolted in, and when you take it out, you're going to remove half the wall with it? What's the method? And then the adaptation to real estate. Is this something customized or built or attached specifically for that property? So based on IRMA, the judge then will determine based on IRMA, the judge will determine if it's a fixture or personal property. Questions on that total circumstance test? Do you guys pull your chats up? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Jennifer.
So do y'all have any issues, like with the above ground pools? Because I know some leave them and some don't. I mean, can that be an issue too?
It could be, and I believe, yeah, swimming pools excluding inflatable. So it would depend on, like you said, that above ground, is it inflatable or is it set on? Again, when in doubt, write it out. So if
Okay.
your buyer says, I refuse to buy this house without that above ground pool, then we know we can include that in our offer. So the
Okay.
seller knows we want to leave it. Yeah, when in doubt, write it out.
Now you said if you take it down before they even see it, then that doesn't matter. Right. Okay, gotcha.
Gone, right? It's gone. And it,
So
like I
that's the
said, in
best way to
perfect
do it.
world, if they never see the pool, then we don't have to worry about it. But if they do see the pool, then it may come up. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So it's easier to take things down that you don't want them to see before you even take the pictures.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Before I show up for picture day, before the buyer sees it on the listing, on the property for sale, before they come to a showing, they don't know about it. But in the event the seller won't or can't take it down until they move, then we need to address it. We need to do that to protect our sellers, listing agents, make sure that they're getting or not getting what they want. Method is how permanent. How are we attaching it? Adaptation is built in or customized. So you guys pull your chats up and set your chats to everyone. I want to show you a picture of a kitchen. This was a listing I had several years ago. One of my favorite listings. This home was so nice. And when we look at this picture of this kitchen, why don't you tell everybody in the chat, what are things that are going to go? What are personal property items in this picture? And I'll give you a few minutes to type stuff in the chat, and then we'll look at it together. So let's see what we're getting. So I'm going to go back up to the top, see what we're getting. What are things that are going to go? People say the chairs, the bar stools, the chairs. Yeah, but don't they match the island? So if the island's going to stay, wouldn't the matching chairs stay with them? Not unless we agree. Just because they match doesn't mean they're part of the fixture. Everybody with me? By the way, I know a couple of you said possibly the island, possibly not. Some islands are on rollers. If they're on rollers, you roll them right out the front door and they're personal property, right? I don't know how well you can see in this picture, but this island is a fixture. And part of the reason why I know that is I got an outlet right there. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but because there's an outlet, it's attached to electricity, which means it's going to be permanent. So it might be that your buyer says, wow, those stools match that island. Can we have those too? In which case you include those in your offer as personal property that's going to stay. It becomes a negotiable piece. Other things, the coffee pot is going to go because it's just sitting on the counter. Somebody actually said everything on the counter. So the soap things, this fancy plate back here, the paper towel holder, all these things are going to go. Yeah, the coffee mugs, the stuff in the cabinets. The cabinets are going to stay, but the stuff in the cabinets are going to go. That's personal property. Somebody said oven or stove, that's considered a fixture per our offer to purchase and contract. So if we're looking at our standard form 2T, the ovens are going to stay. What about the microwave? That's going to stay, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
built in? Now,
That's
what if
the-
that microwave was sitting on the counter?
No.
Now it's personal property. We kind of starting to see that microwave is attached in a way that it's not falling on the stove. However, if it was just sitting on the counter, then that's the difference in real property, personal property. Blinds are considered fixtures. Drape rods are considered fixtures. The fabric is personal property. That fabric slides right off the rods, right? So your curtains are considered personal property. Your blinds are attached. They're usually screwed in to the sides there, your curtain rods. Let's see. Yeah, you can kind of see like right here is the very edge of the refrigerator. So that would be personal. I'm sorry. Yeah, personal. The decor on the wall, these things are attached by a nail. So you can slide that off the nail, right? The nail is the fixture. Same thing with the flagpole. It's the pole that's attached to the property. The flag just slides right in. So that's a question sometimes we got to look at things, right? Sometimes we got to ask, does that flag come out of the pole? But we're starting to get the idea, right? It might be that we come in and we know our offer to purchase and contract, so we can have these conversations with buyers and sellers about what is personal property and what is not. Not all of this is so not all of this is so cut and dry. So it might be that there's questions. Again, it might be that your buyer says, I'm not buying this house without these bar stools. Then we definitely want to make sure we include that when we make the offer. Is that starting to make sense? Because anything is negotiable. So whatever the parties agree to. What questions do I have? What about the plates? Yep, fridge. If the curtain rod is on hooks, then the hooks are attached, the rod's sitting on that. So again, a lot of that depends. Sometimes you just got to walk in the front door and see. Again, we're familiar with this, or we will be familiar with this fixture list and our offer to purchase and contract. And we're having these conversations with the sellers. Tell your sellers, there's a really good chance the buyer's going to ask for the fridge. Are y'all willing to leave the fridge? If they say yes, you can put it in your advertisement. Fridge to remain with acceptable offer. If you're buying a house, fridges aren't cheap. So it might be the difference making or breaking for that buyer. If you ever bought new construction, anybody ever bought new construction? If you buy new construction, you know what you got to run out and buy right away? Fridge and window treatments. It's very, very rare for new construction to come with a fridge or window treatments. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm saying it's very rare.
So the fridge is considered personal property, but the stove is not.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
That stove is a fixture when we're using this contract.
Okay.
You might use a different contract with a different list, but this is the most commonly used contract. And again, this is the one we're going to go over in Unit 10 when we get there. There's another type of fixtures out there. A couple other types of fixtures. Another type of fixtures are considered trade fixtures. These are for commercial tenants. Commercial tenants have the right to come in and install fixtures to use for their trade, to use to conduct their business. Those trade fixtures are considered personal property. And at the end of the lease, the commercial tenant can take those fixtures with them. Now, there very well may be something in the lease that says that the tenant has to repair or any damage that they did when removing those fixtures. So they can't just jerk stuff out of the wall and leave holes and say, here you go. So there's very well something covered that the tenant's got to repair the wall or the floor wherever it was bolted or welded. But at the end of the lease, those trade fixtures belong to the tenant. If they leave them, if they skip out in the middle of the night and they don't come back for their stuff, then they become real property of the landlord. And they can dispose of them however they choose. So we'll look at an example in a second, but another example might be that commercial tenant that has a retail store. You may have to have shelves and racks and hooks, right? Things to display your items for sale. Those would be examples of trade fixtures. They help the tenant conduct their business. Another example might be your commercial tenant for use of a restaurant. So they may come in and design this whole kitchen. They may attach the shelves and the oven and this huge hood. This thing is hung on in a way that it's not meant to fall off, right? What about the shelves, the shelf that the microwave is on? Presuming that this was a totally blank slate when this commercial tenant moved in, they fixed it to make it where they can conduct their business, run their restaurant. At the end of the commercial lease, they can take their stuff with them, again, repairing whatever damage they caused by taking it out. So trade fixtures, those are considered personal property of the tenant, commercial tenant. Another type of fixtures that we have specific to North Carolina are agricultural fixtures. These are for commercial agricultural tenants, farmers that rent the land. Once an agricultural tenant, a farmer, puts in a fixture, it becomes real property and it will remain when that agricultural tenant is finished. So they come in, maybe they put a fence in, for example, maybe they build a barn, whatever. That fixture is considered real property and it's going to remain when that agricultural lease is up, unless the parties agree otherwise. So if we look at our picture, you already go, oh, I love goats. Anybody else? They're a lot of fun. So this guy comes in, this tenant comes in, right? And they have goats. And maybe they installed this fence. Maybe they put in this feeding trough. Now, I don't know much about agricultural fixtures, but I know if this thing wasn't attached in a way and this little fella was in it, it'd probably fall over, right? So there were some holes dug and it was set in, maybe even concreted in. It's attached in a way that it's not falling over when he jumps in it. That would be considered a fixture. And when this tenant farmer is done, when this lease is up, then these items are going to stay unless the parties agree otherwise. Questions on our trade fixtures, agricultural fixtures? course. Personal property also has protection, specifically personal property that's leased or not yet owned. Anything that's leased or not yet owned. These things are going to fall under the UCC, the North Carolina Uniform Commercial Code. And these are items that are bought on credit. The purchaser provides a security agreement. These are going to be considered personal property until paid in full. So maybe you have purchased a water heater and you're leasing it until you own it. It's not yours until you pay it off. It's not yours until you own it. Now, if you go to sell this house with a water heater, you're probably buyer's gonna request you pay it off, right? So when they buy, they have that water heater, for example. This security agreement, by the way, is typically recorded. One thing we're gonna learn when we get into Unit 5, the buyer, when they're purchasing a home, hires an attorney. And one thing the attorney does for them to protect them is a very thorough search of the public records. So if we search the public records and this security agreement comes up, then that's going to alert to the buyer to the fact that we don't own this water heater. We'll get more into recording and the attorney's responsibility, what the attorney does for the buyer. Again, all that comes into Unit 5. But bottom line, again, you guys, buyers have a right to know what they're buying. So something as major as the water heater is leased but not yet owned, don't they have a right to know that? Don't they have a right to know that that's something either we need to address in the negotiations or they got to take care of as soon as they buy that house? We all like hot water, right? And so they have the right to know these things. We can't always trust that sellers remember to tell us this stuff. That's why the buyers have an attorney. That's why these creditors have the right to file that security agreement. We don't want to sell it from out from underneath them. Somebody asked earlier about trailers, manufactured or mobile homes. Are those considered personal property or real property? The answer to that is, it depends. If it has a VIN number, it has wheels, a hitch, and it's registered to the DMV, it is considered personal property. All you have to do is hook that thing up to the back of a truck and away you go. When you remove the wheels and you put it on a permanent foundation, you cancel the title at the DMV. You have converted that trailer from personal property to real property. So the answer is, it depends. If it has wheels and a hitch and a VIN number, it's considered personal property. Once you remove those things, it's converted to real property. We put it on a foundation, we remove the wheels, and now we have a permanent structure. Yeah, Mia.
What would be an example of uniform commercial code? Like what item would be an example?
Water heater, dishwasher. You could go to like Aaron's and buy any appliance on credit. That would be an example. You're buying it on credit. You're not doing it with your Lowe's credit card. You're buying it on credit through the store that sold it to you. So they have that security agreement to protect themselves. Are they going to trust that you're going to pay them off? I know you're standing in their store saying, I'll pay you, don't worry. Are they going to trust you? They got to protect themselves. And that's where that security agreement comes in.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Could I convert it back to personal property? Yep. I got to get it off the foundation. I got to get back on wheels. and I got to run down to the DMV and register it. So you go back and forth, kind of like the ceiling fan. You could go back and forth. So manufactured or mobile homes. Another type of housing, we're actually seeing this gaining in popularity. Maybe you've heard of this, maybe you won't. But there's a type of housing out there called modular housing. Modular housing is built in large sections off-site. So this huge warehouse, maybe they're building a room at a time or a floor at a time. They bring that large section of the house in. Once it's installed on the land, once it's assembled and put together, then it becomes real property. We're seeing this more and more. There's pluses and minuses to everything. Some people, we may be able to get a house built faster if we're building as much as we can in a warehouse, because now we don't have weather delays, for example. If we're building a house by stick, piece of wood by piece of wood, and it rains for a week and a half, we're kind of on break, aren't we? So some people kind of like that. Have you guys ever been driving down the highway and seen like half a house? That very well may be what you're looking at. The other half is on its way or it's already there. But once it's assembled, once it's put together on site by the builder, then it becomes real property. What questions do I have? Again, just getting this understanding. Sometimes you can look at something and say, oh, clearly that's a fixture, or that has personal property written all over it. Sometimes you can't. So what do we say? When in doubt, write it out. Y'all want to know another one of my super simple philosophies? If it's important to my buyer, then it's important to me. If it's important to my seller, then it is important to me. Once they share something of importance to them, it becomes my job, part of my job, to make sure they're getting it, they're keeping it, whatever it is. Questions, comments? So the next section, we're going to get started on this. We'll pick back here where we left off. Don't go anywhere yet. We're going to get started on the next section. And the next section is introducing us to the different types of estates in real estate. First off, to define an estate is just the type and the amount of interest that one has in the real property. It's your interest in the property. It's the degree, it's the nature, it's the extent. What I want you guys to understand for your exams, when we see the word estate, we're referring to one's interest. What is their interest in this property? And typically speaking, we're dealing with two different types of estates. There's an estate of ownership, referred to as a freehold estate. There's an estate of possession, referred to as a leasehold estate. So bottom line, our estates, if we can break these down, either you own it or you rent it. And it's going to let you know what your interest is. Now, we're going to talk about the freehold estates, the ownership estates, on Thursday. Hang on to leasehold estates for Unit 11. Unit 11, we're going to talk about the landlord-tenant relationship. We have some North Carolina laws that regulate landlords and tenants. So we'll define the different estates. We'll come back to this in Unit 11. But where we are in Unit 2, we're going to talk specifically about those freehold estates. And I really don't want to get started on this now to not be able to finish it. So we're going to end here for today. Please don't go anywhere. We're going to end here for today. If you haven't had a chance yet to look ahead at Unit 2, I'm on page 29, talking about the different freehold estates. Please look ahead the rest of Unit 2. On Thursday, we're going to finish up Unit 2. We'll get going in Unit 3. So I encourage you guys to look ahead. I really do think it helps. Because if you look ahead, if you read ahead, or if you look at the YouTube video ahead, you've exposed yourself to this information once. We come in class and talk about it. You've exposed yourself again. You study it after class. There's 3 times you looked at it. Guys, most of this, a lot of this information is not a one and done, which means the more times you can review it, the more times you can revisit it, the more it's going to start clicking. Like I said, I know some of you are sitting there right now going, this is easy. And I hear you. The first couple weeks, we're just introducing you to some of these topics we're dealing with. Again, once we get a couple weeks into it, we're going to get into some heavily tested material. And I'm trying to prepare you guys. I'm trying to form these good study habits now. So when we get to these heavily tested units, you're off and running. Does that make sense? So how many of you are committed? How many of us are going to start today? Day 1, perfect place to start, right? Woohoo, thank you. Don't let it get away from you guys. I'm serious. So many times at the end, I hear students say, I wish I would have started studying sooner. So as far as I'm concerned, today is the day to start. This class moves forward. I don't have a rear view mirror. So make sure you're keeping up with us. Make sure you're keeping up with the material. Set aside that study time. You'll need it. Trust me. What questions do I have? Comments? Concerns?
I have a question. I
Yes.
know you said you're going to post the YouTube link today. Do we wait for Thursday for the link, or will you be able to email us to let us know between today and tomorrow if it's already on YouTube?
So if you want the link, so I'm getting questions about it. So I'm going to do the channel today, and then I'll give you guys the link on Thursday when we come together. I'll give you the link. If you want it before Thursday, just reach out to me. I'm happy to respond, but I'm not going to send it to all of you. I'm going to wait and give it to you on Thursday. But if you want it, if you really, really want to review it tomorrow or whatever, just shoot me an email and I'm happy to respond. Otherwise, I'll give you guys the link on Thursday. It'll have today's class. And then after Thursday, it'll have Thursday's class, and we'll keep adding to it. So eventually we'll have it all. And I think that's the best. I do. I think that's one of the better resources I can offer you guys, because again, it's that power of repetition. If you can hear it over and over and over and over and over again. I've had students tell me, I don't want to get anybody in trouble at work, but I've had students tell me maybe your boss allows you to have earbuds in while you're working. So maybe you can have it at work, in your car, osmosis while you sleep, whatever, right? But I think the power of repetition, especially as we start getting into some of this more heavy stuff, I think that makes a big difference. So absolutely, I'll give it to you guys on Thursday. If you want it sooner, just reach out to me. Julie, the real estate instructor @gmail.com. I know my email's long, but if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Because who am I? I am Julie, the real estate instructor @gmail.com. So you can remember it that way. It's easier to respond. The last thing I have to say to you guys for today, thank you guys for a great first day. I look forward to this class. I hope you are as well. This is a journey. This is a process. I'm going to be with you side by side. We're going to get through it. We need everybody to do their parts. I also like meeting you guys after the first day. So I would love if you guys sent me an introduction of yourself, send me a text or an email. Tell me who you are, why you're here, what you hope to gain. You don't have to, of course, it's not required. But I really do enjoy meeting you guys and getting the opportunity to know you guys a little bit better. So if you want to send me an intro, if you want to share, I look forward to learning more about you guys as we go and understanding your objectives and overall helping you get, what's that goal? Remember, that goal is that license. We're not going to put our cart in front of our horse. Step one, you got to pass this class. Fair enough? Fair enough. Y'all have a wonderful afternoon. The sun's out, so go get some fresh air. Have a good day tomorrow, and we start at 9 a.m. sharp on Friday.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
I think she meant
What did I
Thursday.
say? Yeah, what did I say?
Friday.
Okay, yeah, I was like,
Sorry.
Thursday, okay.
Whatever. Thursday. Yeah, thank you.